order, and we're going to get going. Before we get into the official thing, we have a update. As we know, Shannon Kane is going to be stepping down and getting ready to run for the House of Delegates, so we do have another situation where we're going to have to, go through the same process that we've been going through. We're handing out some potential timelines for dealing with this situation. And we're going to open it up for a little bit of a discussion.
I don't like being a
Do we have any
situation.
more copies?
I know.
They can have mine.
Why we couldn't have gotten this, are we having to decide today, or are we gonna decide?
No, I think if you go through it, we just want to at least get it posted, and then we'll talk
But
about
what
it.
if we don't agree with it?
Okay?
I don't get a say.
Well, you're here, so you do.
Do we have any more?
We got extras?
Okay, Mr. Wood?
Yeah, you should have, did they not make it down there?
All I got is a timeline.
We need another one.
We
They
only
might be
want
stuck
to-
here.
And there's some questionnaires?
I don't have a questionnaire.
Okay, they're coming
They're
down.
stuck with the mayor.
There we go.
Okay. This is just, the mayor and I met and talked about this, and then Amanda and the city attorney also put together these timelines, and then Amanda also provided the questions from the beach district. I don't know if they're all, well, there's one of them that's highlighted in yellow, which was question 7, which was a specific beach district question. It was also a question asked by the soon-to-be former councilwoman Kane. So but the timeline, basically, if you look on these two documents, there's the timeline that shows the different things on it that gets it through. So, but like I said, we talked about this, I guess, Friday, and then I picked this stuff up today here, so that's why I wasn't here before.
Mr. Moss?
My only objection to this is, I don't think we should be appointing someone before we vote on the budget on the 14th. There's no way this person takes office on the 7th and 1 week later they're voting on $2 billion. I just don't think that's due diligence, and I think that's wrong. And I can't support the timeline for that reason. I think any reasonable citizen watching would think that someone who reconciliation happens on that very day, supposing we have reconciliation, and to think that 7 days later, that person is voting on something that they've had no involvement in or briefings or along the way, I think is injustice to the person and is disrespectful to the citizens themselves. And so that part of the timeline I do not agree with.
I kind of feel the same way. I mean, I feel like we're rushing the beach seat anyway, so I definitely don't think we should rush to appoint the Rose Hall seat that quickly either.
Well, this is why we're getting it out for now and then for discussion, but if I could, once again, I really feel that it's imperative that the seats are represented. And, but that's just my opinion, and I just think that, that's why we're here and open to discussion.
Well, if this is what this group by consensus agrees to, I will be bringing a resolution for a formal vote to put people on record that they believe that it makes sense and it's good judgment to appoint someone 7 days before the budget vote, and we can all be accountable for our explanation as to why we think that's a rational decision. But this is not rational at all.
Okay, any other comments at this point?
Well, I think that anybody that's considering it will be able to get all the materials and be following along and submit questions like we do and attend all of the meetings and all of the hearings, just like we are.
I think that's not realistic. Number one, how many we already have had before this, all the CIP. And if you think someone's reading through all of this and all the budget hearings and doing all that and being cognizant of all that in the time frame without any reference point, I don't think that passes the sniff test. I don't think that's realistic that most people will comprehend all of that and be making an informed judgment. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and that's why I will push it to a public vote.
All right, at this point,
Barbara
yes.
has-
Barbara?
We would be voting on this, right, to adopt this today? this timeline? I mean, didn't we last time? Or-
No, I think
No,
all
we
we're-
had to name a date, okay.
Is there just an agreement to post the ad for now?
Well, I certainly think we
Yeah,
should do
Mark,
that.
Mark, what's your, just place the ad today, and I
The
think,
only thing that you would have to do today in order to facilitate this timeline, if that's what the body chose, would be to authorize the placement of the ad. That doesn't necessarily say when you're voting or anything else. It just keeps you on track if you want to try to hold to this timeline.
And that would require 8 votes to put it on the agenda for today.
Does it require a vote?
Well, I don't think it requires a vote to place the ad, but if, you could bring to a vote next week to say, you know, you can ask me to draft a resolution for next week that says you don't want to do the appointment until after May 14. But I think what staff needs today is, 6 people, to say, go ahead and run an ad. And then the proposed ad, I think, is included in here. I haven't seen it, but I thought or I haven't read it, but I saw it was in here. And all the ad would say is the same things for the beach district. It just would say your application had to be in by April the 22nd. It doesn't commit you to a timeline beyond that.
okay. If I could ask if we could just proceed at least with the ad to get the ball rolling on this process, and certainly I think Mr. Moss and Jess's comment should be weighed, but at least, you know, just to take the initiative to move forward and at least place the ad. All right, tell you what, if we can just go around the table, this is just to go ahead and place the ad without, you know, any, fixed time, about proceeding, and then we will have further discussion on that. Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, we should place that.
Okay?
That's just all we're voting.
That's all we're gonna say, is to move forward with the ad today. Jess?
So we're gonna do the ad on the 22nd, and.
No. No,
Or,
we're
I'm
just
sorry,
gonna
we'll
run
place
the
the
ad.
ad, but it's gonna be for a deadline of the 22nd.
Yeah, but what, we can go down the line and decide the timetable after that. Today is just to get the ball rolling, to get the seat filled. Because once again, whether we decide to, before or after the budget, at least, get some representation in representing the Rose Hall District as soon as, in the foreseeable future. That's all we're saying right now.
I'm fine with the ad.
Okay, John?
No, I think it enables the process that you plan to adopt, and therefore I'm not concurring with enabling that.
Barbara?
No, I certainly think the ad should go forward. It would be terribly unfortunate if the Rose Hall District had no representation on either the school board or the council with this budget. I think we have to leave all of our options open at this time.
Louis?
I'm fine with running the ad. I want to know a little bit more about how any of the applicants are going to get informed on the budget before
Precisely.
we.
Yeah, that's further, further discussion. Not a problem there. Sabrina?
Yes to the ad.
Do I get to say?
Yes to the ad, and I will echo what I said, for the Beach District seat, that the shortlisted candidates, if you're gonna go with this timeline, should sit down with Dave and John or whomever to look at the budget and learn as much as they possibly can.
Rosemary?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and at least this point proceed with the ad, and we will have further discussion on timelines going forward.
At the next meeting, in addition to what Mr. Moss has indicated, and I assume that he'll be in contact with my office specifically to let us know what he wants his resolution to say, but we also will have, and we have to have at the next voting meeting, the motion to call for the resolution calling for the special election, because that will have to be done within 15 days of this coming Saturday.
Can I make a
Yes,
suggestion?
yes,
That
John.
our normal voting meeting would be the 16th, but we could have a special meeting on the 9th exclusively for that purpose and take care of that earlier, could we not?
You could, you're already gonna have a special meeting on the 9th to review the Beach District applications and provide the short list, is what you had previously discussed for the Beach District
All
vacancy.
right, but could we amend that so we could do this, because all we're voting on is the election, time of the election, which is 5 November. Could we not amend that and do both on that, on the 9th?
You can if you choose to, you don't have to though, because we have 15 days.
I know, I'm just saying, well, we could
It's
tell.
whatever council wants. Whatever you wanna do. Hey, just tell me and I'll do it.
Okay, Jim?
Also, candidate questions, if you guys remember, because Amanda pointed out that when she lists this, is everybody okay with all the questions? Do you want to delete Shannon's question? Or do you want to just have it on there?
That's fine.
Okay,
Leave it on.
okay, so then these questions will be the same ones for both. Okay,
Okay, so all we're doing today is agree to post it, and then we will have the discussion next week.
Are we going to, we probably should discuss what John wants, because.
I didn't say I wanted it, it's just an option that we could
Because
do.
Mark needs to make that decision before next Tuesday, or make the, don't we have to advertise?
But I'm fine with the
first?
council doing it on the 16th. I won't.
No, I think it would be fine, to do it, we're within the boundaries, so,
Yeah, you would have to the 21st, so your regularly scheduled voting meeting still gives us 5 days to get it filed.
okay? Is that fair, John?
That's fine, that's
Okay.
fine. I just bring it up as an option. That
Oh,
wasn't
thank you.
a
Thank you.
hard point with me. I like the
Challenging
timeline.
times, and we're gonna get through. Okay? Okay,
So, Mr. Mayor and members of council, I'll see your added item, and I'm passing out a press release that's going live with the issuance of this press release to the press, announcing, and I'm doing this because Ms. Kane is a big supporter of this, as are all the members of city council, and that is our acceptance. I received a letter from FEMA at 1800 hours on Saturday evening announcing that the city of Virginia Beach has been accepted into the community rating system, and that we are entering it at a level 7, which is almost an unprecedented level with regards to an initial inductee into this program. What that tells the city council is that your constituents who are paying flood insurance will receive a 15% discount on their flood insurance premium. And it is due to the efforts that the city council and the staff have worked on to make headway against recurrent flooding, and of course, ultimately sea level rise, that we've been inducted at this level. If the council would like, I'd like to, Whitney McNamara is, as you know, our project manager from planning. She has worked so diligently over the last 2.5, 3 years. And she has 5 charts if you would like to learn a little bit more. If you're comfortable, I think we have the time to entertain that, if that's the council's druthers to learn about this.
This is fantastic news. You've been asking for this for
So
over
could
2
we pull
years.
this up, and she can do 5 charts in 5 minutes, and she'll be gone. Thank you, Whitney.
I'll make this extremely fast because I know you all do have a loaded agenda today. Our planning director is passing out the slides so that way you can have them for further reference, and please feel free to contact me with any questions after we go through this.
Just a group of people that need.
So as we've talked about before, your homeowner's insurance policy doesn't cover flooding. It's a separate flood insurance policy. The chart up here shows the areas that are in our high-risk flood zones. The areas in white are considered to be lower risk zones. So they can purchase flood insurance, but they're eligible for a lower cost policy called a preferred risk policy. FEMA also has another program that helps residents afford flood insurance called the Community Rating System, which is the program we're talking about today. That's a completely voluntary program that has different activities of things that the city, not the residents, are doing for floodplain management. Things that range from public outreach, our mapping, our regulations, preservation of open space, things we do to decrease flood damage, and how we warn our residents that there might be a flood or a storm coming in. And you earn points in different activities under all of that to come up with your total score. So the chart up here shows the different classes. We are entering as a class 7. We have a little over 1,500 points, and that will be a 15% discount to residents that are in flood zones A, AE, and VE. As I mentioned, the residents that are outside those high-risk zones are already eligible for a preferred risk policy. These discounts will begin for new policies and for any renewals after May 1st of this year, and that is an annual savings of a little over $1 million per year to our residents. So I'm just let that sink in for a minute. That's the important part. We got points, most of our points came from open space. All of the great work we've done in the southern part of the city to preserve lands along the North Landing River, our state
And Leah's
parks. Yes. As well as other open space throughout the community. We got a lot of points for our regional hazard mitigation plan and points for some of our development regulations, among other items. So moving forward, we're going to do everything we need to do to maintain our Class 7. So that involves submitting some data on a yearly basis, and then every 5 years, it's a big review of everything we're doing to make sure we're doing everything still. I'm sure even though we just got in, everyone's thinking about, well, what do we need to do to move up? How do we get a bigger discount? That is an additional commitment in terms of staff time and resources, because that means there's additional things that we're going to have to do. However, we do have some low-hanging fruit. We worked on kind of an expedited time frame to get in, so there were several items that we submitted for points that we didn't quite have all the documentation together, so we're going to work on pulling that documentation together and make sure we get those points. Increased in public outreach, we have several things that have recently been done to outreach to our residents, and I'm sure we will be doing more. And then as we finish up some of the work with the Stormwater Master Drainage Study and the Dewberry Study, those lend opportunities to give us points. So they may not give us points in and of themselves, but the actions coming out of them give us opportunities for more points. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great job. Okay, back to your regularly scheduled program. Our first briefing today is aquarium parking lease, and I think this is the first time that some of our council members have seen Mr. Bob Mathias at the podium. He gets locked away in Richmond during the session, so Assistant City Manager for Legislative Affairs and Military Affairs, Bob Mathias is here with our Director of Aquarium and Historic Houses, Cynthia Spinolis, and he is going to give us a presentation about something we have been working with, the Army National Guard and the Richmond. So,
Mr. Mayor, members of council, great to be here. I'm really excited about this opportunity, and also have Dave Jarman from Public Works here, and Becky Kubin, as well as Cynthia that the manager mentioned. Preserving the future of the Virginia Aquarium Marine Science Museum. The city, I guess I need to do this. The city leases the current Aquarium and Marine Science Museum parking lot and the Owls Creek Boat Ramp overflow route from the Commonwealth. And we've been doing this since 2003. And we started with a $100,000 a year lease, and it goes up 5% a year. And goodness, the multiplier effect, we're up to $218,000 right now. We have a little over $900,000 left in the lease over the next several years. We also paid $1 million for buildings that the National Guard required us to pay for when we got the aquarium parking lot. And they also made us pay for the value of the timber on the parking lot. So we own that timber. We can do with it whatever we want. And the city is now a partner with the Army National Guard to create a new entrance to Camp Pendleton. And this is, we have quarterly meetings, as you all know, with the naval bases, Little Creek, Fort Story, and Oceana Dam Neck. We also meet on almost a quarterly basis with Camp Pendleton. So we have an excellent relationship with them. They're right in the heart of the city. A lot of what they do affects the city, and a lot of what we do really affects them too. So we're looking, you all approved last year the General Booth Boulevard Camp Pendleton intersection improvements. So we're going to build a new entrance, which is right across from the existing boat ramp parking lot. And this is going to be a much safer entrance. They used to have the entrance up here, which was dangerous on a curve. And we still have the parking lot, the overflow that comes in through there, excuse me. The parking lot overflow is right there for overflow parking. And we're going to have a new entrance here, which is going to be, I think, much safer for everybody involved. Camp Pendleton got $850,000 to go through this, to go towards this entrance, and came to us and asked us to assist them in constructing it. And we were also interested in improving the boat ramp parking lot entrance. So this is what the improvements entail. You have this, you can see a little better. We're going to have a turn lane to the left coming down here from the oceanfront. We'll have a turn lane from the right. This will be the new entrance, and the gate we're going to talk about in a little bit of the right here. And this area in here is the overflow parking lot, and then again, we own all these trees. So the lease that I hope we can go sign with them, requires us to maintain a 10-foot buffer. So we actually have quite a bit of property there that we can expand onto, and plus all this property over here where the existing parking lot is. So the city's already paid for the design. The construction is split with the National Guard and us. And as you can see, we've got a pretty good schedule going there to go into construction about 1.5 years. And then the parking lot, the overflow parking lot, we have a plan there to go to design later this year and construction next year. But we actually did that design for the overflow parking lot a little bit before we had this deal in mind, so we might go and amend that timeline just a little bit. These are pictures that show where the entrance is going to be. This is the entrance to the existing overflow parking lot. Here's Camp Pendleton over here. Interestingly enough, this area is probably 4 or 5 feet higher than the street, and certainly higher than over on the boat ramp parking lot. So that area is nice and high. You can see looking down towards the ocean front, and then looking south down towards where we are here. The National Guard needs a new access point, controlled access point. Right now they're accessing off of Bird Neck Road, South Bird Neck Road, and it's a pretty informal entrance down there. It doesn't meet any of the standards. And we have National Command Authority activities that take place at Camp Pendleton. There's some very important activity goes on out there, and they consider they're at a high risk for a terrorism attack. During this last session, Delegate Knight and Senator Wagner championed funds for this project and to make us work through the process. Senator Wagner basically approached me at the end of last year and says, you know, Bob, we actually are in a very powerful position, the members of the Virginia Beach delegation right now. They ended up, both those gentlemen ended up being conferees on their respective budgets. And Senator Wagner said, look, if there's something the city really needs, let us know about it and we'll help you with it. So the budget that's adopted, and this part has been approved by the governor, he didn't propose any amendments to this, is we'll provide $2.5 million next fiscal year, an additional $2.5 in fiscal year 2021. And they can only be used for the National Guard for a new access control point. We will get in return a 50-year no-cost lease with a second 50 years available. We'll also have the aquarium parking lot and the overflow parking lot. And we'll save a minimum of $800,000 not making the lease payments in the future. We had been negotiating with the Guard, as I said, for this parking lot for a number of years. And the folks from the state GSA were a little difficult to work with. And they told us, regardless what you do with the entrance or any other things you've done with the National Guard, they're not going to affect your lease payment. They were going to start at whatever the lease payment was in 2023 and go up from there. And they were basically assuming, hey, if you're willing to pay so much a year with a 5% inflator, that's where we're going to start. So we think we're saving quite a bit of money here. Aquarium Marine Science Museum includes a new building to be placed on the existing parking lot right out in front of the SEAL tank. And all parking will be located across General Booth Boulevard. And we're looking for at least 1,000 to 1,500 vehicles in the initial garage, which is many years in the future. But, you know, we have to make plans now to preserve that option. And the new facility includes a pedestrian bridge that y'all have talked about in the past. The aquarium, as you all know, is tremendously successful, and Cynthia's got a little halo on over here for all the good work she does. But we think that expanding the aquarium again sometime in the future will add an additional day of visitation to the average overnight stay. And that overnight stay now generates $538 worth of expenditures. And the aquarium, as the study you all saw just a few weeks ago, generates about $257 million in economic activity for the city, an additional amount of money directly to the Commonwealth. I think the Commonwealth was getting about $9 million a year in direct tax revenue. Expansion of the aquarium in the future will greatly increase the overnight visitation, as well as contribute to increased amount of visits from our citizens and citizens from the surrounding area. As I mentioned earlier, there's a National Command Authority activity at Camp Pendleton. We reached out to them repeatedly, and they basically want us to build a parking lot so you can't see over the parking lot into Camp Pendleton from any floor, and the top floor is high enough that you basically can't put a small ladder up against it and peek into Camp Pendleton. And the bottom, we're going to design the bottom of the garage so it's high enough for buses and heavy trucks. So in a disaster, we could have a staging area there. The military could use it for some sort of military contingencies. And it won't add that much cost, but greatly increase the utility of the garage. And again, the budget that Mr. Hanson presented to you had the $2.5 million in cash for 2020. And then we'd include in the 2021 payment for the city's budget. This will provide a long-term future for the aquarium and its expansion for the next 100 years. Avoid the $800,000 in lease payments that we're now committed to pay, but we won't after we sign the lease, and provide much-needed improved overflow parking for the Val's Creek boat ramp. This was just an average day during the summer month, and the cars are just parked willy-nilly in there. So when we design that overflow parking lot, we'll add some order to this and make it much more usable. We have quite a bit of property there. We'll be a good neighbor to the Camp Pendleton National Guard, the Air National Guard, and the other entities that utilize Camp Pendleton. There's a Smithsonian or class memorial out there at Camp Pendleton that nobody can see right beyond the parking lot here for the Red Horse members that died in a plane crash about 10 years ago. I mean, if you ever get an opportunity to go out there, please go see it. It's well worth a visit. Again, it's like something you'd see in D.C. And we desist in the provision of a secure gate to Camp Pendleton. And discussion, if you all have any questions or
Rosemary and then Barbara.
Is the 800,000 total or 800,000 a year?
No, the 800,000 is what we owe on the current lease through 2023, and so we will not have to pay that money.
So it's a total 800,000.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that 200 plus per year that we pay would not continue for 50 years at some escalator and then 50 years beyond that. Would enable us to build that parking, would take the surface parking off of the Owls Creek side, the west side where people park there. We'd still maintain our
Handicap
ADA
space,
parking over there, but we would be able to have that space to start the future planning of what our Marine Science Research Center is going to look like and what our partnerships with academics. But we would we have a lot of space over there on the Pendleton side, and so we do some site planning, and over the years to come, we would come back to council and lay that all out.
200,000 a year for 50 years. 50
It's
plus.
actually.
It's 200,000. Actually, we're paying 238 now, and it goes up 5%. So, and that started at 100,000 just 17 years ago or so. So
if you multiplied that times 50, you'd see what the initial lease is and what you save. Now, you'd have to factor in the costs associated with building a structured parking, but without superstructure on top of it, just a standard parking, your cost per space is significantly reduced.
Barbara?
Right, this is the Virginia Aquarium,
I know where you're going with this one.
and the state realizes $9 million a year from the aquarium in taxes. How much does the state pay toward the aquarium?
Well, actually, this year, they gave us two things. They gave us authority to issue a stranding center license plate, which will generate, we think, maybe $250,000. And they also, Delegate Knight, again, thank you, Delegate Knight, included $25,000 in the budget for the stranding program, which we don't get but a very small amount now.
$25,000, we're paying them $5 million. No, but we're paying them $5 million
Yeah.
for this deal. I really, think you all finally got the best you could get, but it does kind of stick in my craw a little bit.
I think when the council is ready to go forward with the aquarium expansion, we need to get this aquarium elevated to the same sort of funding that the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts gets in Richmond. They've gotten several $100 million just over the last 10 years. I think they're looking at another $110 million expansion with predominantly state money. In the old days, when the aquarium was initially constructed, I think Senator Holland and others got us perhaps $1.5 million in Delegate Pickett. That's how far back it goes, 85, 86. So we've gotten some small amounts of money from the Commonwealth, but that's back when they were putting about $20 million a year into what they called non-state agencies, and that's all stopped about 3 recessions ago.
Let's hope they fully fund education first.
Indeed.
But our partnerships with universities for marine science curriculum, I think your investment in the Darden Stranding Center and the Marsh Pavilion improvements with the veterinary, you're going to see an improvement in visitorship, and it's going to enable us to open that door of discussion for state support as we expand the Virginia Aquarium.
It used to be the Virginia Beach Aquarium.
That's correct.
Yes.
You know?
I remember that. I remember when Chuck Robb came when we opened it.
Yep. Well, it's the Virginia Beach Aquarium now. It's the
Anybody
Virginia
else at this
Aquarium.
point?
Yeah. Thank you to the
Thank you
delegate.
very much.
Yeah, thank you, Delegate Knight and Senator Wagner. Again, can't say enough about them, especially with Senator Wagner leaving. And they've been great for the city of Virginia Beach, and I know Delegate Knight will continue to be.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Cynthia. So next, I'm expecting our folks from Parks and Recreation come through the door. And we're going to get a briefing on the summer youth program. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So I'd like to introduce our Youth Opportunities Office Coordinator, Tiffany Cowell, and she is going to give you an information briefing on what is new, an existing program, but one that we're investing in and partnering with our local businesses to provide opportunities for our summer youth.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Tiffany Cowell, the Youth Opportunities Coordinator with the Department of Parks and Recreation. It is a pleasure to be able to speak with you today about one of the programs that we operate out of our office. That is our Summer Youth Employment Program, or SYEP. SYEP matches participants with jobs and departments within our city government and also in local corporations and businesses. The program offers youth ages 16 to 21 a source of income and the skills necessary for academic and professional success. We're grooming participants by developing wrong one? Oh, there we go. We're grooming participants by developing good work habits, helping youth build strong work history, and exposing them to new opportunities. This is a picture of Carlos. He worked 2 summers with us and 4 summers with us in our SYEP program. He started at 16, And he was unsure about whether or not he wanted to go into medicine or veterinarian science. So here's a picture of him at the Animal Care and Adoption Center. After a couple of summers, he decided that he was going to go pre-med, and that's what he's doing now. Since 2002, we've worked with hundreds of our youth in the city. We have an 8-week program that begins with the city's application process. These kids do an application just like any adult would do if they wanted a job in the city of Virginia Beach. They do an essay in the application, they do an interview, and then there's an intensive orientation. And this is all before job placement. Organizational skills, time management, resume and interviewing skills, study habits, fiscal responsibility. These are all things that students have told us they've gained from being in the program. You've all been given a copy of our annual report. Here are some statistics from that annual report. Last summer, we had over 25,000 hours logged by our young people. That's a lot of time working. They earned over $213,000. 40% of our participants came from Tallwood, Kempsville, Salem, and Lansdowne. This year in our recruiting efforts, we've been doing what we call lunch and learns, which is where we go into the high schools. During their lunch period, we partner with counselors and administrative staff, and the kids come in and we do different sessions about things ranging from interviewing, we do applications with them, we bring in professionals to discuss different opportunities and areas that they've told us that they're interested in. Since we've been doing that this year, we've seen an increase in Bayside. We've had a lot of increases in the Bayside area and also in the First Colonial area. Consequently, so we are here, our kids earned $213,000 last summer. In Norfolk, they serviced 260 kids with an operating budget of $800,000. And in Newport News, they serviced about 600 kids with an operating budget of $1.5 million. So fiscally, I think we're being very responsible with what we're doing. We're on target to double our program. Last year, we served 105 kids. We're aiming for 200. And we're on target to reach that goal. And part of how we're going to do that so that we don't cost any more to the city is that we're partnering with private businesses. So the city pays part of the expense for the program, and private businesses will pay the other part. So if you think back, you might remember your first work experience. For me, there was a shopping center on the corner of Witch Duck and Independence. The shopping center isn't there anymore, but there is a little restaurant in the shopping center called Po Folks, and I worked there as a waitress at Po Folks one summer. And when I went to Po Folks to get a job, I kept my eyes and my ears open. I knew I wanted to work that summer. I went in, I filled out an application, I did an interview, and I got the job. Well, you know, most kids are doing that. In fact, statistically, 98% of kids in our country work. Between the ages of 15 and 24, kids are going to have about 4 to 5 jobs, and they're doing it without a structured program like SYEP. So you might be wondering, if kids can go out and get a job without us, why is what we do so vital? Well, part of the reason why it's so important is because we are not just getting these kids a job. Kids can find work, and they do it all the time. What we are doing is helping them to develop skills and lay a foundation so they're going to be fiscally responsible and that they're going to make different choices later on in life. And that's why communities all over the country are adopting and funding SYEP models, because it's about an investment that you're making in our young people. When you look at what we're doing, the level of empowerment that we're giving these young people, and the caliber of employee that we're going to develop for our city, there's no comparison between what young people get in SYEP and what they get when they're not in our program. And when you consider the broader range of what kids today are going through, you know, if you have kids, if you have grandchildren, mentor any young people, most of us would say that we want certain things for our kids. We want them to be happy. We want them to be healthy. We want them to have positive role models and positive relationships. We want to put them on target for a good future. But unfortunately, for most kids, they deal with things like depression, lack of acceptance, over-medication or abuse, a drug addiction, loss, confusion. And so it makes it difficult for them to succeed. It kind of stacks the deck against them. There's an organization called the Search Institute. They are a leader in the field of research, especially for child development. And they've developed something called the 40 developmental assets, and something that they call a scientifically derived formula for human thriving. And if you think about that, even that word, if you could think of a word that you wanted to use to describe what you want for your kids, wouldn't it be for them to thrive? So when we look at what they have said about human thriving and what it requires, there are a few things. It requires someone to stir up a spark. What that is that thing for that kid that brings them joy, brings them happiness. When everything in your life is great, what's going on at that moment? Then they need somebody who's going to champion that for them, and they need opportunities to experience and express that spark. If you add to that the idea of financial capability, which is where kids have an understanding of financial principles and they know how to access financial information, access financial benefits, and how to use them properly. What you then have is the formula for the next generation of our vibrant, financially sustainable, welcoming, inclusive Virginia Beach citizens. So, how does SYAP help build those foundations? Well, we're exposing them to experiences that ignite that spark. During the application process, we start by having them write an essay. And a lot of times the kids say, oh, I don't want to write an essay. And then we say, okay, listen, there are no wrong answers. All we want to know is who you are. What makes you excited? Just tell us about you. And they say, oh, I can do that. Why didn't you say that? Why did you call it an essay? It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have another word for it. But just tell us about who you are. So we start right from the beginning in the interview process, igniting that spark. We have them do an essay. When they come in for their interview, we ask them questions like, what makes you proud? Can you tell us about your proudest moment? We sit them down with career counselors and we do a career assessment and we do a personality assessment. So they start to find out things about themselves that they never knew. Like there's nothing wrong with you being shy. That's called an introvert. And there are plenty of positions for people who are introverted. Let us share some of that with you. So then once we pair, and we do all of this before we give them a job, because all of this informs where we place them. Then, once we do that, we give them a champion. First of all, our first champion is Andrea Holloman, who is our program coordinator and works very diligently to coordinate this program. Then we give them, each and every one of them gets a job coach. And the job coach's job is to call that spark out, to name it, to run interference for it if necessary. That job coach goes to the job several times during the summer, meets with the young person, talks to them, goes over issues they might be having, helps them navigate through the job world, helps them interact with their supervisor, so that when they're in that position, they are sharp, they are set, they are ready. Then we give them opportunities to do things that they would not have been able to do otherwise, because not many 16-year-olds have an opportunity to work for the city of Virginia Beach. They just don't. So, when we close this opportunity gap for our young people with paid employment, resume writing skills, and interviewing skills, we start to see something happen. They start to succeed. One of the slides I showed earlier, and you'll see that in the annual report, we have maybe 27 kids that returned last year, which might sound like not a large number. 27 kids, that's not that many. But really, that's great, because we want you to come in and be equipped and be empowered to then go, and now you have what you need. You have the tools that you need to be able to do what we've taught you how to do last summer. So it's wonderful for us when we have, 25, 27, 15 kids that come back. That's great, because what that means is all of the rest of them were able to move forward and take the next step on their own. This is some other information from your annual report. These are some of the things the kids shared with us. 88% said they enjoyed their job and had new experiences at work. 100% completed skills assessments and personality tests, which told them more about themselves than they knew before they entered the program. They received 1,380 hours of job coaching. And 90% 90% reached their savings goals and say that they would continue the habit. So our financial partners, and we have a couple of financial partners throughout the city. One of them is Bank on Hampton Roads, and another one is the Virginia Beach Schools Federal Credit Union. And together we're reducing the barriers to banking and increasing access to the financial mainstream. I'm going to share with you a quick story. Last week, right now we're doing our interviews for this summer. So last week we were interviewing a young lady and we're talking to her. One of the interview questions we ask is, do you have a bank account? Because as a City of Virginia Beach employee, you must have a bank account because you're paid through direct deposit. So they have to have a bank account, but also that's sometimes their first access to financial products and financial services. So we said to her, do you have a bank account? She said, yes, I have a bank account. In fact, I have checks right here. And I said, oh, okay, great. And she said, well, yeah, I mean, my mom gives me checks all the time. And she pulled out a check and she showed us what her mom gives her. And I said, well, sweetheart, that's not a check. That's a money order. That's called a money order. And she had no concept. She had no concept or no idea of the difference between a check and a money order. Well, as part of the interview process, we are set up over at the Joint Use Library at TCC. And so we have interview rooms over here, and we have computer labs over here where they're doing assessments, and we have our banking partner in one area. So we sent her over to the banking partner, and she got some counseling on financial matters. And so once she got some information, she said, oh, well, I'm going to set up a bank account. So then she opened a bank account for herself. Now, I don't know what's going on in her household. I don't know what kind of financial situation that they're dealing with, but what I do know is that there's clearly some financial capability that's not happening at the parental level. And it's being passed on to the next generation. So now, because she's an SYEP, we've stopped that. Now we're giving her information and tools so that she can have a different level of financial savvy. And it might not seem like a big thing that she got a checking account, but that's huge. That was the first asset in her financial portfolio. And our partner allows us to have accounts for our young people that have no interest or no fees and no service charges. They set up a special account just for us in our program. This is a young lady. She was an NSU student, and she worked at Forbes Candy. Forbes is one of our community partners, or one of our business partners, rather. So this is one of the companies that works with our program. They pay the young people directly, and they employ them. Everyone in our program gets at least 27 to 35 hours of work every week, and they earn different rates based on their level of experience. Grace worked here in the city in planning and design. Grace was a college student, yeah? Grace was a college student. How many years did Grace do with us? 3. Very good. So SYEP participants have a foundation and a foundational building experience in our program. They're not just getting a job, because kids can go get a job. I got a job like I shared with you, and I was a waitress, so I got paid every day because I got tips. And at the end of the week, you know how much money I had left? 0. One of the best things about our program is when we talk to the kids and they say, because we do surveys, and they say the financial planning, the goal setting, the budgeting was the best part of the program, not the paycheck. I was shocked. I said, wait, let me see that again. It wasn't the paycheck. It was the skills that they walked away with. And that was wonderful, because what that told us is they got it. Because delayed gratification is one of the foundational one of the foundational building blocks for financial empowerment. If you can't delay your gratification, you're never going to be able to acquire or amass any sort of real wealth. So I want to thank you all for your support of our program, because without what the city does for us, we wouldn't be able to do this. I thank you for the challenge that you've given us, Mr. City Manager, that we are going to reach. And I ask you to please help us, because the best advertisement is word of mouth. So if you could share this program with your constituents, let business owners know that we need partners. That would help us a lot. Does anyone have any questions?
Jess?
A couple questions.
Sure.
So the program started in 2002? 2009.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there a program before that?
No, there wasn't a program before, but when the program started, it was actually a grant-funded program. And then after the grant ran out, the city recognized the value of the program and decided they wanted to continue it. So it kind of changed forms, but it was the same basic
I
program.
participated in some kind of summer youth program with the city in
Did you?
2004.
Okay.
And I actually worked at the rec center in Princess Anne. But the process was very similar. That's why I asked if it was something, if you guys had been around. But anyway, is this open to only the high school level?
16 to 21.
16 to 21?
Yes.
Okay.
So we do high school and,
Early college?
yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And we do public, private, and homeschool students.
Hey, anybody else? Thank you very much. Great program.
Thank you.
Wonderful opportunity for young people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Okay, so we shall commence our resource management plan, better known as the operating budget. And so our first briefing team is going to present the Human Services operating budget. Human Services, as you know, Danette Smith has moved on to Nebraska, and I'm sure they're asking why we brought somebody from Virginia Beach, because we've had ice and snow ever since poor Danette showed up. So they're, but anyway, we got a 3-person team, and it's going to be Dr. Donald Kirkland, and he is the Deputy Director, Continuous Quality Improvement. And then we have Galen Thomas, and Galen is the Deputy Director for Social Services, and Eileen Smith, who is also a Deputy Director for Behavioral Health Development Services. And I should remind the council, this is our largest department in the city. Doc.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Manager. I really want to thank you for this opportunity to present the Human Services budget and to discuss a couple of really exciting initiatives that we're working on. So the DHS organization is comprised of 1,171.30 FTEs, which represents about 627 in behavioral health, 424 in social services, and almost 119 in central administration. The total budget request that we're asking for is $124 million, which comes out to nearly $57 million for behavioral health, $56 million for social services, and about $13 million for central administration. So this chart gives you an idea of where the budget is separated into. What I would like to draw your attention to the 3 largest areas there. You can see that social services is nearly 28% of our budget. Developmental services, nearly 23%. And again, behavioral health, 20.5%, and then the other percentages. But the important thing to note there is those 3 large pieces of the pie represent nearly 70% of our budget. Okay, so this is kind of a busy slide, but what I want to draw your attention to is under the fiscal year 1920 proposed, you can see the 124, 318, 995, and then our FTEs are listed again. And you can see the change from last budget to this budget is $2.4 roughly million, which represents about a 2% increase in our budget request. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some budget highlights, some things that happened up at the state. So the state, the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, they cut the general funds to Virginia Beach by nearly $1.2 million. That's a significant cut for us folks. Statewide, they cut at all the CSBs by $25 million. Big, big hit for us. And that's because they wanted to fund Medicaid expansion. Okay, so how are we going to recover that? Well, we estimated that we can gain back about $600,000 through Medicaid fee revenues, but that left us with a pretty big gap, about $600,000. So to handle that gap, we decided to close one of our programs. It's the Harbor Psychosocial Rehab Day Program. And then we also eliminated 10 positions, totaling about 9.75 FTEs. Now, I wanted to talk just a little bit there is we are a service delivery entity, and so we were really concerned about what we're going to do with our individuals that were in that program. So we've moved many of them to existing programs within the city. We assessed those that needed to be assessed and moved them to outside the city programs. And we had some graduates who no longer needed services, so that was great. And the other really happy news is you can see the 9.75 FTEs, we were able to put into other existing positions. So no job losses, and we were able to serve all of our clients. So that was really important to communicate to the council. Our city funds, general funds, target reduction for fiscal year 1920 is $310,937, which we will reach by eliminating 4 vacant positions totaling 4 FTEs and reducing operating costs. But at this point, I wanted to express the department's sincere gratefulness for the budget office and how they took into account the state general funds cut and allowed us to have a little bit of a relief instead of the target of 565. So we do appreciate that and wanted to express that. Okay. Moving to our general fund requests, we are asking for $2.9 million to support the comprehensive health record implementation, $194,000 for 8 new positions in behavioral health for same-day accesses, which you all know is, or don't know, may not know, is a state-mandated program. For the 8 positions, what we did is we utilized cost savings by converting contracted manpower and reclassifying to full-time positions. So that allowed the department to save a little bit there. We're asking for 2.25 FTEs in developmental services, case management, which is cost neutral based on generated Medicaid revenues. We're also asking for $20,000 ongoing maintenance for GPS units on the city fleet vehicles assigned to DHS, and I'm happy to report that the actual GPS units are in this year's budget, on schedule to be installed in the vehicles. So really exciting news. We've really needed that for a long time to be able to track where our vehicles are. And finally, we're asking for $100,000 for a DHS share of ongoing costs to maintain the Housing Resource Center. So, okay, I wanted to share a little bit about what the department's focuses are based on our strategic plan. And I wanted you to hear that we're really a forward-thinking department. We try to plan for the future, and we're very proactive in doing that. So we're going to talk just about a few of the initiatives that are really important to us. And the first one, which is really important to me and Eileen, is our comprehensive health record. We've had for many years been limping along with a partially implemented system. It's a legacy EHR system, nightmare to use, basically. We contracted with Welligent in November of 2018, and we had our kickoff event at the Convention Center on the 25th of February. We think it's going to take about 18 months to implement this incredible tool. And I just want to share just a few highlights about the tool before I go on to the next initiative. The new system is really a state-of-the-art system. It's going to add mobility for staff. We need to be able to go out into the community and provide services where they are. So this system will allow us to do that. It will allow us to improve our data tracking. These days, the state wants data. They're not going to make decisions unless we can prove what we're saying, and that means data. It also will give us improved, it'll give us dashboards. We don't have those currently. So it'll give us enhanced billing capabilities so we can capture more revenue for the services that we're providing. Very important. It has very strong reporting so we can hold our staff accountable and make improvements to the services that we're providing. And it has improved methods for case management and documentation services. This is a really big deal to the department. So, any questions about that initiative?
Anybody?
Great. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Galen. She's going to talk about the next initiative.
Oh, can we, is this, are there any questions about this section of the budget or just this slide? I'm just trying to make sure what the process is. I have questions on this section, but I'm going to wait till the end. I don't know what the preference of the mayor is. I'm just trying to figure out what he said. Initiative, I thought you were, is this whole nother budget thing that we're going to talk about?
No, these are just current initiatives that we're
Okay.
working on.
I'll wait till
We
the
wanted
end
to provide some information about what the
till the
department's
end.
doing to the council, because there's some new members, and we wanted to
Nope, I'll wait.
bring everybody up to date, so.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of Medicaid expansion, which is under the FAD program, which is the Financial Assistance Division. Medicaid expansion has taken the place of the Governor's SS program, which was known as GAP. And GAP was designated for individuals who did not qualify for Medicaid. It was for low-income adults between the ages of 21 to 64. And the new Medicaid expansion is for Virginia residents between the ages of 19 to 64, not already receiving Medicare. And these individuals must meet the income requirements and also meet the household size. Medicaid expansion was put in place starting November 1st, 2018. So individuals were able to apply back in November 2018. Coverage started January 1st, 2019. We began to enroll over 11,222 people as of March 9th. So originally, we were projected to enroll 10,000 people, but as you can see, we have already started to enroll over 11,000 citizens. We have been able to hire 7 out of the 8 budgeted positions, and we're in the process of hiring 1 person in the next couple of weeks. So that's basically a snapshot of Medicaid expansion. Any questions about that?
Only that because I'm trying to assess the financial health of our residents who pay these taxes and fees. Can you please provide me what the qualifying criteria is, household size and income? I know it's a matrix, but if you could just provide that, that'd be
We
great.
can provide that to you. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Eileen Smith, so I'm rounding it out with the last 4 initiatives that we have. So I'm going to talk to you first about same-day access. This is a part of what's called STEP Virginia, which is System Transformation, Excellence, and Performance. Comes down from our Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, which mirrors our name for this side of the agency. What this means is that if a person has a mental health concern or substance use concern, they can walk into what's called our Pembroke 6 office and be seen the same day by a clinician. And that clinician will refer them to whatever services that they need, or perhaps they need to go into a hospital. All of that assessment can take place on the same day someone needs it. This is a very big deal for CSBs across the state. All of us had up until July, but everyone, I'm happy to say, is fully implemented as of March 1st. We started back in July, and since July, we have served 853, but that's last week's number, so at least 25 more people have rolled in here. Because every day, it depends. We could have 3 people show up, or we could have 17 people show up. So what we're doing a lot with this system is we're moving people around. So our clinicians are readily available to see people, but they also have to do that regular business when we don't have as many people show up. So same-day access is the first thing that we're implementing. There are several other implementations that are going to take place over the next 2 years. The next one, next slide, is about primary care. Oh, I have the slides. Sorry about that. Okay, so the primary care step, and both of these are mandated. I will let you know by July they're mandated. So the primary care step is when we're screening an individual to see what they need in terms of physical care. So that's not necessarily in our body of work regularly. We see all the clients in the city who need mental health, intellectual disabilities, or substance use services, but now we're starting to look at them as the whole person. So do they have a diabetic need? Are they hypertensive? So we screen them, we do what's called a body mass index, we do their blood pressure. We also are doing labs now. That's where this comes in, is that we're going to do labs. We're going to send them off to a laboratory, have them come back and do that follow-up. So with that, we have to do it on everyone who's on an antipsychotic medication. So that's over 2,000 people. So we are going to hire an LPN and also a 30-hour administrative assistant to help with the data and the tracking, because we have to prove all of our outcomes, obviously, to the state. So that has, we're recruiting right now, but we've also started a little bit with our nurses. We're doing that BMI and the blood pressures and all that. Our next initiative that we're very proud of is the Mobile Co-Responder. This is a partnership that we have with our police department. It is going extremely well. It started back on the 6th of November. They have seen, as of today, 205 people, although this slide says 115, or 115 as of the first 3 months. 205 people. What we're finding is the majority of them we screen and they don't have to go anywhere else. Or perhaps they need to be medically cleared. So we're getting the EMS department also involved. They've been involved from the beginning, but they're starting to become a little bit more involved with this and what can we do on the street to clear them medically. If not, we send them to a medical facility to be cleared. The next highest category is pretty much a voluntary hospitalization. We have had just a couple arrests, not too many arrests, 2 arrests, and several that we have actually had to have involuntarily hospitalized. So the project is just a hit. And our clinician absolutely loves it, Goes out from 2 to 10, Monday through Friday. Right now are the hours for that. Finally, the jail services. We have been working with our sheriff and the undersheriff since about 2014 to at least start the conversation of who we have in the jail, who we want to divert from the jail, and what that looks like. As you know, our sheriff will tell you that he has a very large mental health population. So probably in the 2017, 2018 range is when we really started to say, well, what can we do to impact this? So at this point, we have a program that we will be starting in the summer where we're going to focus on that jail diversion, but also the assessment. So every single person coming into the jail will get a mental health assessment. And the sheriff is going to talk a little bit more about this in his budget presentation, but we are very pleased that we're getting about $916,000 from the General Assembly. I believe that will be in what the governor's going to look at this week. Okay. So that's the great initiatives that we're doing. We're doing a lot more than that, but we just wanted to highlight a few things. Do you have any questions for me?
John?
I assume that the 2,052 people receiving antipsychotic medication are people that are receiving that under some existing Medicaid or Medicare program. Is that correct?
Not all of them. We do have some people who have not received Medicaid yet, but the majority of individuals have insurance.
But I'm saying, if there's some private individual who's getting an antipsychotic medication, or are they under by federal law in this program? Or I'm just trying to figure out what the universe that defines who gets to be that 2,052. And you said insurance, so someone is not in some state-funded program, but their own health insurance, taking an antipsychotic medication, are they in that 2,052 number?
These are our clients. So we serve over 12,000 people. So this is the 2,000 that are on antipsychotics.
That is just people that are in some program that you
Yes.
have. Okay,
Yes.
that's
Yes,
why I
sir.
just wanted to make sure that I had that right.
Yes, sir.
And on Medicaid expansion, how many people on Medicaid that are not on the expansion but under the core Medicaid program do we have in Virginia Beach? The number of people that are on Medicaid, not just the expansion?
I would invite Galen up here.
We have 33,000 households that are on, that receive Medicaid benefits. So I will have to get back to you of how many of those 33 households are receiving Medicaid expansion.
Okay.
We
Now-
haven't broken it up. We haven't separated that number.
The reason why I asked, because I'd asked how many recipients we have on SNAP, And that's about 43,000 and some change, but that's not households, so I'm just trying to get a
Well, we
correlation.
have 18,000 households that are receiving SNAP.
Okay, that's
Well,
good,
exactly 18,741 households.
because I had the number of recipients from another report, because I'm just trying to get a good counsel, just, you know,
For
how much.
2018 fiscal year.
Right, that's what I was looking at. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
Go back to the main brief now?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sure. I'd like to, it's really hard to track when you're doing all this stuff at home. This is the main budget. I'm gonna go back to the part, the summary slides up front. But I know it's hard when you lead through these revenues and these FTEs, when you try to look at the summary page that's here. It's not easy to plus and minus all the adjustments that are in the subsequent slides and where they occurred. So if we could get that, that would be great. 'Cause that's just to make, because in the end, there's a lot of minuses, but in the end, there's only a lot of pluses too, and it nets out to 4. And it was unclear, are all the positions in here split funded between the state and the city, or are there FTEs in here that are totally now the city paid for, now that the state has retrenched its payments? I can't distinguish between that from the information provided.
Okay. All right, so I'd invite Dawn up here.
Because I'll be
we're gonna have
compiling
to
the
get you that.
information. For the, if you'd like for the staffing, this is not real cut and dried because depending on which unit you work in, how much state funding you get. But would it help if we did,
Can you do it by that breakout you showed me right there?
do the changes and let you know how many of that is state, how much was, or what percentage was state? Because all of it would have had state funding.
Sounds to me like the city's
Okay.
percentage of the total funding has gone up. That might be true, because I can't see all the FTA adjustments.
Yeah.
But if you
And-
just
And it
listen-
actually would be, if you think about it, I don't think it's a giant leap in percentage-wise, but if you think about the fact that we have the enhancement of 2.4 million for the comprehensive health record, plus we have the money that we're bringing down on the state side. So I can get that for you, though.
Right, and it would be nice to know the difference between what the state is providing and actually see where in these categories you're counting on Medicaid reimbursement rates. Only because all depends on what kind of action is taken on the president's budget in 20. Those reimbursements might not hold, and I think it would be important for the council to know what is the sensitivity analysis if the president's budget is adopted, or if no budget is adopted, which could also happen. What would be the shortfall if you didn't get the growth in reimbursement rates and they stayed flat? All these areas have great risk exposure to the current fiscal climate at the national level. We just need to understand that.
Okay, I will work with the budget office
Right,
with all
thank you
that
very
to get
much.
it for you.
Thank you.
Just, Mr. Moss, I do believe, David, would you please respond to the question about the puts and takes on individual FTEs in each of the departments? Don't we have a section in the operating budget that reflects?
At the back of the executive summary, we show all the additions and changes to FTEs by department.
Yes, you do show that, but you don't get this breakdown to see where they actually occurred in
And
terms
we'll
of
do
the
that
service
crosswalk
delivery.
for
I have
you.
seen that at the back of the budget. Thank you very much.
Right, and we'll do a crosswalk for you.
Thank you.
And finally, I'd like to thank, you have a
go
question. I was going to thank you for being our liaison.
Thank you. Well, and I wanted to thank you folks for meeting with Jessica and I after our retreat to explain the transition with the mental health clients when closing Harbor Center. This most vulnerable population, we don't need to cause more disruption and chaos and changes in their lives. So I appreciate your meeting with us and finding solutions and places and programs to help them so that their transition is made easier. So thank you for doing that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you for your hard work.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Appreciate it.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everybody, appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Demetria Lindsay is the acting health director. This is a joint acting health director between the city of Norfolk and the city of Virginia Beach. Mr. Chandler sat on a personnel search to find a new director for our health department here in Virginia Beach. And we just really struggled along with partnering with the state to find somebody who really has those attributes that we lost in Heidi. And I got to meet Dr. Lindsay, and I found out that she's that most brilliant person And so she serves both the city of Norfolk, Mr. Doug Smith, city manager there, and works with his staff as well as our staff. And so what we agreed to do with the state is to pursue what I call a chief operating officer for the city of Virginia Beach, and the city of Norfolk will have a chief operating officer, and Dr. Lindsay will provide that professional doctoral oversight staff leadership position. And so she attends all our department director meetings. She attends our departmental leadership meetings. She is ingratiated with all the work that we do in all the categories that the health department helps serve the city of Virginia Beach, and she has my utmost confidence. And so she's here today to present the budget. And I guess Dr. Brumman's going to come too, or Mr. Brumman's going to come on too, or are you going to do it all?
I'm doing it all, but they're there for backup support.
See, I told you, she's got it all. So, Dr. Lindsay, thanks for being here today.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. City Manager and City Council and Mayor. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'm excited for the opportunity to talk to you about Health Department services and budget, especially during National Public Health Week. So the first slide here is just an overview of our organizational programs. On the left, you see those services that are supported with City General Service funds, which includes 6.38 FTEs. I've also included on the right our cooperative agreement programs and services, since they are supported by city dollars through our cooperative agreement. We have 105 additional FTEs under the cooperative agreement. And here's a breakdown of the city contribution to the budget. Public health has a $10.6 million operating budget, of which $3.4 million is the total city contribution. That largest piece of the pie that you see there represents the cooperative budget match, the city's contribution to the match at 45%, which represents $2.589 million, and the remainder are direct city funds. And here's a comparison of the current reductions compared to the previous fiscal year. And to the far right, you'll see a reduction of $85,000. That is inclusive of the 1% reduction that is required of the city, as well as an elimination of a position and other minor cost savings. The decrease in FTEs from 9.808 to 6.38 represents the elimination of one position. And also there are two positions, all of these are public health nursing positions, but two positions are being moved over to state wage positions. And this is in order for us to be able to capture and pull down state reimbursement funds for their services under the nursing home screening program. As Mr. Henson shared with you, I have been with the Virginia Beach Health Department since late spring of 2018. It's been a pleasure to work here and to learn about the city and your initiatives. I wanted to just briefly describe a couple of priorities and initiatives that we have been working on since I've been here. We talked a little bit, you've been shared a little bit about the Joint Public Health Leadership Model. This has been initiated here in Virginia Beach and Norfolk, but also several other parts of the state, including Richmond City and Henrico area, also southwestern Virginia, and the Lynchburg, western Piedmont area. It has already really been in place partially in the Virginia Beach area as described since I have been on board as the acting health director. We also had a part-time COO in whose services were provided by the chief medical officer for our state health commissioner. So he was lent to us part-time. He's now moved on to other services, and we are in the process of hiring a full-time COO for that position. The opioid crisis continues to be a major concern and priority for the city as well as the state. It was declared a few years ago by our state health commissioner as a public health emergency, and we do see it as a real concern and a crisis in our communities. In Virginia Beach has really led the way in addressing the opioid issue in our state. The city leadership and communities have really taken charge in tackling this issue. Under this effort, we've seen fentanyl and heroin overdoses decrease. From 2016 to 2017, we went from 12.4 per 100,000 to 10.4 per 100,000 deaths, and that's compared to an 11 point per 100,000 in Virginia overall. So the number of deaths in Virginia Beach are actually less than the state average. However, prescription opioid overdoses have actually increased, and that is a concern, going from 6.4 to 7.5. It is an area of continued effort by the health department in collaboration with the city as well as community leaders. We have been very active in conducting Revive lay rescue training. In addition to, in 2018, we conducted 175 training for 175 individuals. So far this year, and we haven't quite finished our first quarter, we've reached 138 individuals, so we've almost approached the total that we achieved last year. We're also looking at moving upstream at prevention and as well as addressing harm reduction. We're addressing providing drug disposal kits so that we can get those prescription meds that are no longer being used by the household members out of the house so that a teen or someone else does not come along and have access to those medications that are no longer needed by the family member that they were originally prescribed for. There's lots of active work being done across the state to educate providers about the importance of considering whether an opioid is actually needed to treat a pain problem. In addition to that, we are also providing, at the expense of the state health department, free Narcan for those individuals who undergo the Revive training but would otherwise not be able to access the medication. And for those who are not aware, Narcan is a medication that can be given that will actually reverse an overdose and save a life. But that's a last step, stopgap achievement, and what we want to do is move upstream and try to prevent overdoses to begin with and drug addiction too as well. I did want to briefly highlight a success with our school immunization program. Virginia Beach has had really outstanding rates in terms of school immunization preparation for kids entering school. However, it came to our attention last year that in the previous year, one community had experienced a significant challenges in this area. 60% of the children in the community were not able to enter sixth grade on time because they did not have the proper immunizations. We don't want to see our children start the school year behind. We work with the community and partners, and we really owe an appreciation to Human Services Department in helping us connect with community members. But we were able to go into the community, provide Tdap vaccinations in the community. We went from 60% of children being unvaccinated at the time school started to 97% of the children being vaccinated at the beginning of this school year. So we're very proud of that success. This was in Virginia Beach.
What community was that?
Bayside. Yes.
Jess?
On the immunization, did we do any kind of, I guess, diagnosis as to why that was so high?
My impression was that we were looking at a community that was dealing with a lot of challenges, and I would summarize that to say that they may have had challenges in being able to access the services.
It was an access to the service, not a
Lack of interest, because as soon as we went out into the community and provided that service, they were there and ready for it, obviously.
Like 6th grade, by that time, most of the critical immunizations have been given, so the Tdap, that's the only one we require, isn't it?
That's the only one that's required, and actually this year it's being delayed another year. 7th grade, yes.
Thank you.
That being said, though, and it really reflected an important concern for us, because we recognize that that is a reflection of other potential public health prevention issues that we need to focus our attention on for that community.
I'm sorry, I have one more follow-up question.
Yeah, sure.
Did we see, when we have this high non-immunization rate in those communities, do we see an increase in where those illnesses are prevalent, or is there any kind of data that shows the overlap of
Yes, I can at this time tie the immunization rate directly back to diseases in the community, but we do know that there's an increased risk. So the Tdap, includes tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis. I will go back and look and see if we've had any outbreaks of pertussis in the community. That might be the easiest one to see, but it is an opportunity waiting to happen. So we don't. Yeah, we don't.
That's very, and it's just pertussis being probably the one that is most frequently dispersed, I guess.
Sure.
That would be interesting, yeah, thank you.
And of course, a lot of illness may be in adults and go unrecognized.
Ms. Henley?
The measles is sort of in the news these days. How are we with that as far as immunization?
I don't have any numbers for you today, but I'll be happy to go back and look.
I'm assuming we haven't seen a problem where you would know right off the top of your head.
We have not seen a problem, and we are not experiencing, to my knowledge, the resistance to vaccination that we have seen in other parts of the country at this point, which is something to be grateful for.
Anyone else at this point?
I'll wait till the end.
And finally, I did want to speak briefly about sea level rise, which is a public health and economic concern due to climate change. We are concerned that intrusion of water, of course, into drain fields for our conventional and alternate septic systems can eventually lead to those septic systems failing. This poses a risk of intrusion of water into local wells as well as our aquifers, affecting the quality of our water supply. Additionally, rising temperatures impact our susceptibility to harmful disease-carrying vectors. So there's an increased threat of new opportunistic infections coming into our community as temperatures rise and our climate becomes more hospitable to other vectors that at this point are not a part of our local community. And one example of that would be Zika, where there is one mosquito in our area that will carry the Zika virus, but not as well as the Aedes aegypti mosquito, which we commonly associate with that infection. Zika was the infection that a few years ago was connected to malformations, microcephaly in particular, in newborns associated with the mother having had the infection during her pregnancy. There was a lot of fear and a lot of concern that we may see that in our area because of our mosquito challenges that we have with being surrounded by a lot of water. Fortunately, Aedes aegypti does not grow very well in the Hampton Roads area. We do see it sometimes in western tidewater occasionally, but is not endemic in our area at this point. As temperatures rise, this could change. That's just one example of what can happen when the climate changes. So with Zika, that was a clear example of where we had a new problem coming on the horizon, where we find ourselves as public health, I say sometimes, trying to build a bicycle and ride it at the same time that our researchers are still writing the operations manual. We're learning about a new disease, and at the same time, we're having to respond. We face the potential for increased risks of those type challenges as we move forward with climate change. In addressing this, our environmental health manager is a part of a statewide public health task force that's looking at sea level rise, and our agency is also addressing state regulations affecting septic systems and well systems. So finally, while we still maintain that our core public services are important, public health is also increasingly looking at population health and looking further upstream to address those factors that affect health at its core. So when we think about health opportunity, we often think about disease and gaining what has been lost. But health actually begins with safe and nurturing environment for our children as we struggle to promote through our Healthy Families program, with access to healthy foods and clean water, with housing, as we have addressed recently with our new Housing Resource Center, with transportation, education, and economic opportunities so that we're able to attain for all a means of quality of life. So it's exciting to see these opportunities reflected in the Council's priorities and in initiatives across the state, such as the Housing Resource Center. We recognize that many opportunities for health involve collaboration with our partners, because these are not all things that are within our scope or our purview. We look forward to working with you and supporting your work, recognizing that in so doing, we're also furthering and supporting our mission of ensuring the best health opportunity for all of Virginia Beach. I thank you. If you have any additional questions, happy to address them.
First of all, I was very interested in your comments about the sewage, and this wouldn't be the place for septic tanks, but at a later date, I would like to know what the new initiatives are. I also would be very appreciative of your insight as to what trends we are seeing. I know the new package plants that are in have a reporting requirement to the state. I don't know how often that's done, but I know they sample the effluent, and that stuff is reported to the state. Our legacy systems don't have that requirement, and I think that's probably the bulk of our septic systems. They are probably legacy systems, I suspect, which are being stressed by the rising wind tides in the southern part of the city. So I'd be very interested in understanding your insights and what the new regulations are, because that would get into our land use planning and whatnot taking place. I'd be interested in that. I remember going back to the days when, Barbara, you remember when Nancy Parker was here, we had the dental program that was volunteered, and we went out and did the schools and all that thing to provide, because that's a very underserved population, statistically speaking. I think that program is still active, is it not?
Yes, it is. And actually, when we went out to Bayside to provide the TDAP, we also went out and provided dental screening services, and people were very excited and very interested in those services.
Yeah, I think that would be good information to capture. Once again, it talks to just what a significant population we have that is stressed by the cost of city services. I just want to make sure we're capturing all that. With regards to your vaccinations, are those federally provided? Are we purchasing those, or do they come through the federal system and we have those available? I know I see these things about free flu shots, this and that. I'm sure that's through your department. And are those being provided by the state? Are we purchasing them? Are they being acquired by pharmaceutical companies donated? Just how are we acquiring the vaccines that we're administering?
It depends on the vaccination, but our required vaccinations for our children are provided by the state. In the event of certain outbreaks, we may also provide other types of vaccinations. In general, those that are optional may be provided free to those people who cannot afford them otherwise, but others may be charged to insurance for those who are insured. Particularly thinking about adults. Now, I think the free vaccines that you're seeing in communities regarding flu shots, at least for the health department, we do acquire a small amount of vaccine from the state to use as part of our emergency preparedness exercise. So in the event that we had a large outbreak that required our immediate attention, this exercise sort of helps us prepare, and at the same time, we're offering flu vaccinations to the community because we want to get that level of vaccination as high in our community as possible. So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone, but that vaccination is free. Otherwise, when we're providing flu vaccines at the health department or in the community, we may actually charge insurance or the individual. But again, whenever someone is in need and they're not able to afford the service, we seek to provide that for free.
I applaud you for what you do. You're definitely a high net value added service in the community.
Thank you.
I agree. Ms. Henley?
It's hard to kind of keep up when we have a department that is state as well as local, and we're
Yes.
supplementing with another program. I mean, John remembered the dental, but we had quite an issue with the prenatal services at one point. Are you all still able to offer that? And I think it started as a volunteer basis with some of the doctors, but are you still with the prenatal?
We are still providing maternity services for individuals who would otherwise not be able to provide those services. Those are for low-risk pregnancies, and we do that in collaboration with two doctors' offices in our community, and also we refer any high-risk pregnancies to EVMS. But yes, we are providing them. We also make sure that we get them in for WIC services and other things that they may need as well.
I noticed in your mandate it was family planning, but I didn't see anything about prenatal being part of the mandate. Is that local or is it state? Is state participation?
That is local. It should be on the left for your list, maternity services. It's a label as maternity.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Great
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time and effort.
Coming in, guy. Okay, next we have Andy Freeman, Director of Housing and Neighborhood Preservation.
But she said it's still local. You're still doing it.
We're still paying for it.
Yeah. That's amazing. State doesn't pay for it.
You're on, Andrew.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Hanson, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about our budget. I'm happy to have my staff leadership with me today. So our department is 80 FTEs and 10 contractual staff. Our department consists of our director's office, code enforcement, housing development, rental housing, which is our rental subsidies, and homeless services. Our total budget request is $34,802,000. The city portion of that is $6.7 million, which is about 19% of the total. This is where our money goes to. In general, the rental housing division, which pays the rental subsidies for over 2,300 households, is the biggest portion by far. Homeless services is the second at 5.3. We have the regional housing opportunities for people with AIDS grant, the director's office, code enforcement, and housing development. In our major changes category, the major number you'll see as far as year-to-year changes is the 33% for homeless services, and that consists of two pieces, a total of $1.3 million. It's really, so I'm going to give you the rundown and get to that. So, Mr. Moss, you had asked about the president's budget. The president's budget is for the fiscal year following. So we are spending, starting July 1st, we are spending the approved budget that was signed by the president.
19, correct.
And so his changes, if they took effect, would be a year from now,
But still during this budget cycle.
but not in our funding. So we're spending federal funds 9 months after the federal fiscal year starts. So they won't impact us until July 1st of 2020. As always, when we're here with you, we have to estimate how much federal funding we get, because even though the Congress has approved a budget, the amounts allocated to each city have not been set. But this budget actually shows some increases in HUD funding, so we expect that our level funding estimates will be conservative. Our proposal does show an increase of $1.7 million. About half of that is supported by expected federal or state funds. The main item for city funds is $852,000 above target for the Housing Resource Center operations. And there's really two pieces of information behind that. One is, when we put our budget together, this was a year ago, and we did not know what the full contractual amount was for the current year. This was, so the current year's budget is lower than the full year's cost of an operation. And the way we're managing that is that we are only operating for 9.5 months. As you know, we opened in September of this year. And so that's why we need an increase. It's not really a change. It's a full year's annualized cost. And then we have another $42,000. We realized we needed a city staff person on site 24/7 because there's so much going on at that building. We need people on the ground in place all the time. Just a little time frame, because we have been working on this project, as you know, for several years. We submitted a budget in December of 2016, anticipating that we might open in fiscal year 17-18. But we did not open, and because of that, we returned $840,000 to the general fund last July. As I said, we submitted this year's budget in December of 2017, when we did not have our proposals back for our contracts, and so we did not have the information we needed to fully understand the costs. Right now, we do. As you know, we've been in operation for 6 months, and the 852 represents our best estimate at this point of a full year operation. And so that's why that number is there. I was asked definitely to talk about all the non-city sources that are supporting what we do in homeless services and the Housing Resource Center. It's over $1 million that we've brought to the table that is non-city funding. For instance, the healthcare services cost the city nothing at the Housing Resource Center. They're funded by a grant from the Hampton Roads Community Foundation. You took a big role in getting the vouchers placed at the apartments there, and so that funding started as of yesterday. We have federal grants for several of the different programs. We're applying federal funds available through the city to many of the other programs. So the total we've been able to put towards the cost of what we do is $1,086,000. Some initiatives we're doing. We're about to begin contract negotiations for all of our contracted services at the HRC, and we're going to be we already are seeking cost reductions in some of those things. We are in the process of working on a job development and training program. We are starting an outside assessment of our Housing Choice Voucher Program that are going to identify opportunities for process improvements. We've been running that program here in the city for over 40 years, and it's time to do an assessment of it. And as you know, we're working with the multi-department team to support all the work that's going on in the Plaza, the Lakes, and Windsor Woods. I'm happy to answer your questions at this time.
Mr. Wood.
Thanks. Andy, I was looking at your budget, and then something jumped out at me because it's also in the human services budget, and you've got that $852,000 increase, and it says for target cost variances caused by O&M increases and things like that, and you specifically talk about janitorial, security, utilities, and things like that. But then when you flip over to human services, they're asking for $99,000 for security, cleaning services, utilities, et cetera, in the same building. So
Yes, sir.
What I'm trying to figure out is who is in charge of all this, and I just want to make sure we're not duplicating services? I mean, or do we have 2 security contracts and 2 lending contracts and all that, or is it just?
We have one contract, and we're cost allocating based on our estimate of amount of space used and amount of services used, but you can be assured that we have Cindy Walters here who's managing the one contract with our big supplier who does janitorial, food, security, maintenance, everything. One contractor, one contract, just cost allocating as best we can, figure out.
Just cost allocation, it's not human services hiring somebody and housing hiring somebody. Okay, that works.
Correct.
Okay.
They're not hiring separate people.
That's it, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? John?
It would be good to know if you had to absorb to make your budget neutral, what would be the offsets that you would have to take to make your budget neutral? In other words, you have to absorb the $853,000. What would that happen? You know,
Yeah.
people are making reductions in their home budgets to
Right.
pay their taxes and fees, so it's only fair we know what we'd have to do if we didn't have increases. So
Yes, sir.
I'd like to
So-
know what that is.
Mr. Moss, we have made reductions actually to bring that number down lower than it would have been. We had 2 increases, one increase in addition to the 2 I showed you, which was in code enforcement. But we, for instance, this year are applying significant resources from federal funds that were in excess of what we expected to reduce our need this year. And then we would just have to look at that. That's a big chunk to take out of anywhere, so I couldn't give you the rundown right now.
I wasn't asking for it now, but it's a big chunk for anyone who takes a reduction, and everybody has too many requirements at the end of the money, including
Right.
families. So I think it's only fair that we know the risk that we would or would not take and how scalable it is,
Yes, sir.
because that's what families have to do.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks,
you.
everybody. Do a great job. Really appreciate it. Director of Office of Cultural Affairs, Emily LeBeau. One
Afternoon.
doorway and
Yes,
people coming in and
transition.
people going out. It's all yours, Emily.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Honorable Mayor, members of council. Thanks for the opportunity to review the Cultural Affairs operating budget. The operating budget covers the administration of the office, funding to the Arts and Humanities Commission, operating support to Virginia MoCA, the Sandler Center, and for next fiscal year, there's a proposed total reduction of $25,000. The majority of the Cultural Affairs budget comes from the general fund and is used for facility operations and grants to community nonprofit arts groups. Personnel costs are less than 12% with 4 FTEs, and included in the FY20 budget is the conversion of a contracted employee to 1 FTE without any budget impact. Thought I'd share some recent projects from the year. It's really been a transformational year for the arts and culture in Virginia Beach. The work of Cultural Affairs engaged the community, made a splash with art throughout the city, supported creative entrepreneurs, and provided service to nonprofit organizations like the African American Cultural Center. We welcomed new, exciting creative businesses and art projects to the Vibe. We saw the beautiful opening of the Ziders American Dream Theater in Town Center, and the dedication of the canoes at Lesner Bridge, which was donated to the city by the Public Art Virginia Beach Foundation. Just in the past couple of weeks, we debuted 3 murals by local artists chosen by the public at 3 recreation centers throughout the city. In my budget presentation last year, I shared that one of our goals is for Virginia Beach to do more to actively support and provide culturally diverse programming. Cultural Affairs has recently partnered with members of the African American community on 2 important projects. Many of you joined us for the dedication of Portraits of Grace a few weeks ago. An artist captured the oral histories and portraits of members of the African American community to pay tribute to the historic African American neighborhoods in Virginia Beach and their residents. These invaluable stories reside at portraitsofgrace.us, and the installation of the piece is a place of reflection and inspiration and resides at the future home of the African American Cultural Center. We also partner with local artists and students to create portraits of influential past and present Virginia Beach African Americans. We celebrated these individuals on posters throughout the city. In FY19, the Arts and Humanities Commission debuted a new grant program to fund projects that celebrate the diversity of artistic heritage. One of the projects we were able to fund was a sold-out evening performance of An Evening with Frederick Douglass, which happened last Friday night at the Z. The commission does great work, and they're dedicated advocates for the arts community. The Sandler Center, we added a new state-of-the-art hearing loop listening assistance system, which was recently donated by the Norfolk Sertoma Club to make the center's events more accessible for people with hearing loss or difficulty. We're now only one of 5 theaters in the state of Virginia with this technology. We have a deep gratitude for the Sertoma Club for this wonderful donation. A priority of our work is to develop and promote greater diversity in all of our programs. This spring, we're debuting a new series of free and low-cost events at parks, libraries, and music venues, bringing in leading performers of globally inspired music and dance to celebrate the diverse cultures of our community. These performances will highlight vibrant, globally rooted music and dance by dynamic touring artists. Just recently, a few weeks ago, the Virginia Beach Arts Center opened in the Vibe. The new facility includes expanded space for the Artist Gallery, a new pottery studio and classrooms, and is the new home of many of the teachers and students from the old Parks and Recreation pottery and ceramic program. The Virginia Beach Arts Center, I know, will be an important hub for artistic activity in the Vibe. Also included is a small amount of money to study the addition of a new shoulder season. We've benchmarked events in Scottsdale and Sydney, which is a cutting-edge public art installation festival that would be placed throughout Atlantic Avenue and could raise Virginia Beach's profile in international markets. This was supported by the Atlantic Avenue Association, and it's meant to look at how we can bridge their block party, which is in the beginning of November, with the holiday lights, which start right after Thanksgiving. And as I close, whoops. Could you start the video? To further your goal of creating a growing economy and having a competitive first-class resort, we added 35 new businesses to the Vibe and had over 250 arts events. The businesses added 10 large wall murals in 2018, and 15 more are planned for the spring. With the CIP budget, large infrastructure projects are underway that will play an important role in the transformation of the district. It's a true success story of how the community can come together to make Virginia Beach a more vibrant place to live. So here's some highlights of a fun project that we partnered with the Vibe around Valentine's Day. And we did a social media challenge where we challenged the public to let us know what they love about Virginia Beach. And we used the 3D sign, the love sign in the Vibe. And we got 200 fantastic photos of really images from all over the city. So I think this project, along with the others I've shared today, really show the power of how the arts build community and how the projects of cultural affairs are creating an energy that will make Virginia Beach a better and more vibrant place to live. So thank you for the time. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Rosemary?
Well, it's not really a question, but I would like for the council to know that our Miss Emily has been named by the Virginia Beach Rotary Club as the City Employee of the Year.
Yes, I'm very honored. Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm very,
Well
very,
deserved.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Ms. Henley?
If you would refresh my memory.
Yes.
The Arts and Humanities Commission provides grants.
Yes.
And it's on the amount that they have to provide is on a per capita basis?
We structure it as a per capita basis. They have about $600,000 that they provide in grants. So they're matching project grants you have to be a local nonprofit arts group. So their budget is, I think it's $590,000 this year.
How we determine what the city's portion of that budget is, it's not a per person, it's,
No.
How do we come up
I
with
think that was
number?
a while ago that it was a per capita formula, but we've gone away from that.
Well, I know that it's, by leveraging the work with the nonprofits. and
Yes.
City grants, we're able to do a lot and
Oh,
looking
yes.
at the development grants and so forth and the organizations. I mean, clearly this is where we're based.
Right,
And I'm just
exactly.
wondering How we base that amount that we do allow.
I know the funding is and the need is great. We just actually last week reviewed the grant applications for FY20, and we have close to 30 applicants, and the request is always much more than we're able to provide in grants. But the commissioners do their due diligence, and they interview each of the applicants and ask questions and really deliberate on how that money is used. But there's always more need than there is money.
For sure.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks so
Appreciate
much.
everything.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next, we have Cynthia coming back through the door, aquarium, historic houses, and museums. Hey? You're on.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to present my budget proposal with each of you. So my department is responsible for contributing to the quality of life, the economic vitality, and the education of our citizens and our visitors. I am pleased to introduce our board president, Lee Ensminger, and our board president-elect, Sal DeBarrow, from the Virginia Aquarium Foundation. So I'm presentation number 7. So let's start off with a little humor. What's the smartest animal in the world? Come on, Virginia Tech graduate. Well, it's a fish because they're schooled. So in addition to being an educational asset for our community, we're also an economic driver. And we are also very important to our school systems. So let's start off with a few simple things for our department. Last year, we welcomed over 640,000 guests to the Virginia Aquarium. We also had 24,000 students at the aquarium. We also welcomed 20,000 people to the history museums with 7,000 students. Last year, we earned $14.8 million in revenue, and as you can imagine, most of that came from our admissions and our ticket sales. 16%, though, I'm very proud to say, came from contributions, grants, and our foundation revenues. So if you want to do the math very quickly, you'll see that our expenses last year were 12.7. So we had a net revenue of over $2 million last year. Of this, of course, our Aquarium Foundation Board retained those earned revenues. And for today's presentation, I'm really happy to share with you that last year, we used 0 general fund dollars. And in fact, we exceeded our earned appropriated revenues by over $1 million. So you were able to retain an additional $1 million because we exceeded those revenues. So I think that's really good news.
Great news.
Where's it captured?
All right, so it's essential for the Virginia Aquarium to change and become more than just a regional attraction. We want to become a world-class organization. And last week, I was at an event with Brad Van Domelen, who's the director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I liked one of his quotes. He said, "There's no such thing as managing the status quo. You must continually invest." And so during my presentation today, I'm going to ask you to reinvest in the Virginia Aquarium and the Virginia Beach History Museums. Help us grow our economy and help us begin our journey over the next decade to become world-class organizations. So we know that the customer and our future customer and our visitors are our lifeblood. We also know that $260 million is contributed to the Virginia Beach economy each year thanks to the Virginia Aquarium. This generates an additional $9 million in tax dollars that you all can use for whatever you need to use in the general fund. We also recognize that, and ask Vice Mayor Wood, that a disappointed customer is more vocal than a satisfied customer. And we follow TripAdvisor very closely. And so I just wanted to give you a few recent quotes from TripAdvisor. The Virginia Aquarium is nice, but it's small. Definitely on the smaller side, and they didn't have nearly enough tanks or variety of fish. So we know that quality is built on improving this customer satisfaction, and we know that we have to do new changing exhibits, and we have to have new programming. So, of course, we also know that the only certainty in business is change. We know that we have to keep with technology shifts, we have to keep current with our operations. We know that some of our operations become obsolete. And so I'm asking you to help fund my budget request for my department so we can adapt to some of these changes. And of course, we want to get better all of the time. We know that there's always room for improvement, and this budget will help us strive to produce a better product. No, thank you. It's like magic. So this chart is going to show you our budget request. It's $12.8 million, with about 95% of that coming for the aquarium, and the other 5% goes to the history museums. However, what this chart does not show you is that this budget recommendation and request for you is 85% is from our earned revenue, and only 15% is from the general fund. So many of you know that the Marsh Pavilion is going to be closed. It's actually going under renovation. And so we know that our revenues are going to dip slightly over the next 18 months. So therefore, we've reduced our revenues by about 5% in this budget cycle to attribute to that closing. Thank you, Howard. So one of the things to note on this slide is our change in our FTEs. So like many businesses today, we rely heavily on our part-time and our contracted manpower. We like contracted manpower because we can quickly hire for seasonal employees, and we can adapt very quickly for things like our videographer, whose scheduled demands make for him to be able to come at varied times throughout the day. So therefore, we've reduced our part-time FTEs by 10.2 FTEs. However, we've retained those expenses to move to contracted manpower. And I'd also like to point out that the 16.7% reduction in the history museums here is not actually a reduction. We moved the old Coast Guard station and the DeWitt Cottage budget line items to management services budget for non-departmental. So there wasn't actually a reduction there. It's just been moved to management services.
Did they reduce their accounts any?
I don't believe so.
They'll have to look,
David Bradley.
Mrs. Finley, it's all in our non-departmental section of the budget. We have all those kind of what we call organizational grants, HR, PDC, and all that, and that's where they are now.
So you've moved them over there?
Yes, yeah, just an accounting change.
Thank you.
So this slide shows you the budget items that were recommended in the city manager's budget. So the first item, you'll see that, as I mentioned, the Marsh Pavilion is closed for renovation, and we know that we're going to have a reduction of about 5% in revenues. And so the first line item that you see here actually restores those revenues back to us. And some of you might ask, well, you have a building closed, so why do you need that extra money? We still have animals to care for, we still have customer expectations, and we still need to maintain that programming so that we can earn the additional revenues. And please note that the $1 million that I gave you back last year, This is only 361,000, so. So the Virginia Aquarium also supports.
I saw it.
Does that work at home, John?
So the Virginia Aquarium also supports about 3,200 jobs, and as I mentioned earlier, $260 million in economic activity. But becoming a world-class institution can only happen through thoughtful planning, data-driven decisions, and innovative staff. In this regard, our budget proposal incorporates the first phase of a multi-phase budget proposal to become world-class. You'll note that we have 3 new FTEs here. We have a group sales coordinator that will handle group sales through buses. We have a new guest experience coordinator, and we have a digital marketing manager. We also know that successful organizations spend about 12.5% of their earned revenues on marketing. We're only spending about 5% on marketing. So for us to become world-class in future budget years, we'll need to work on this benchmark area. And the last item is, in order to make the Virginia Beach History Museums a cultural asset, we're proposing a history pass. This is in conjunction with the Virginia Beach Public Libraries, where if you have a library card, you can visit one of our 3 historic houses, the Thorogood House, the Lynnhaven House, or the Francis Land House, and you can get in free with your library card as many times as you would like. This furthers the library's mission of educating our citizens. It also makes these a cultural asset to our community, and it also promotes the Virginia Beach history, which we're so proud of. Of course, the $10,000 request will offset some marketing to promote this jointly through the library system, as well as offset any of the earned revenues that will be missing out from the history museums. So initiatives underway. So each year, in addition to the $12.8 million that I'm receiving through the budget process, annually, our 2 foundations, our Aquarium Foundation and our Historic Houses Foundation, contribute about $5 million in private funding to our budget for operations. I mentioned that the Owls Creek Marsh Pavilion is under construction right now. We also have the Darden Marine Animal Conservation Center under construction. The entity of the Aquarium Foundation is contributing $14 million of private funding to these 2 projects. And then the Thorogood House Education Center and the restoration, we raised $300,000 in private funding. To date, we've spent about $165,000, and then we're continuing to furnish the house with the remaining money. So I'm asking you to help us inspire our visitors about conservation. Help us save our animals through our stranding network and our conservation efforts. Help us share our scientific discoveries and our historical discoveries. Help us transform our markets. Our Sensible Seafood program is a program that changes the way consumers and businesses buy fish and farm fish across the globe. And help us finally change the minds of people. We are a trusted voice in science. We're also a trusted voice for our historic resources. So help us preserve that and enhance that. And so I'll end, as I always end, to be great, you have to dream great. And we dream of being world-class organizations. A great aquarium and great history museums, they can't just entertain people. They actually must teach, inspire, and make our community a better place. And so I want to thank Mr. Hansen and Dr. Chandler for their help and their support in providing this budget to you today. But more importantly, I want to thank each of you for your support for the aquarium and the history museums, because your leadership shines through, and we're on our way together to making it a world class. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Rosemary.
A lot of exciting things happening with the aquarium, and thank you for explaining the budget cut on the house.
Oh, absolutely.
I was really concerned, like, oh no, not another year of fighting a budget
No,
cut with them.
it was funny. I showed Dr. Chandler that slide, and he's like, 16%, what is this? I said, I need to explain that.
So the Animal Conservation Center, when is that going to be?
So they're under construction right now. We expect a completion probably in the spring of 2020. And I have Mark Swingle here, who's the Chief of Research and Conservation. So he would be happy to give you a tour anytime you would like. It's still, we just broke ground in November, so it's coming up out of the ground. But as soon as we can get you a hard hat, we'll get you out there.
And then, when is the Thurgood House gonna be? I mean, it's been closed like forever.
No, the Thurgood's open. The Thurgood's completely open.
I mean, Lynn Haven House.
So the Lynn Haven House is undergoing massive restoration right now. And so what we discovered, it had massive moisture. And so we're thankful for the Heritage CIP that you actually spearheaded getting the money for. So when we removed the plaster from the walls, we discovered that the plaster was actually what was holding the bricks together. Which can be challenging. So as we go through a restoration project, it does take time because each step, restoration means that as you remove something, you stop, you wait to see the impacts it's going to have before you go to the next level. So as we remove each wall, we're looking at what are the impacts and then what do we need to repair from there. So we're about 18 months out from the Lynn Haven House being restored back to having visitors in it. We thought we might be able to have them tour through while the plaster was off the wall till we discovered that the bricks weren't in great shape.
So nothing is gonna happen to the floor of between the floor on the second floor is amazing because you can see the chalk.
Oh, absolutely. We definitely want to maintain those where they mark the chalk, so when they put that in, absolutely, that's a historic.
Chalk marks where they match the floor is unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to maintain that, and that will remain. But the walls and some of the brick are under restoration. And if we can give a hard hat tour of that as well, if anyone wants to come out for that, I'm happy to do that.
Place. And then one more question. So I mean, it's very nice about the past, but really 2 of the 3 houses are going to be closed. So I mean, another 18 months, an eternity on the Lynn Haven House, and then the Rose Hall.
Francis Land.
is going to be closed. July?
We hope that we can get the RFP moving so it can close, and that'll be about a 6 to 9 month restoration.
So that's almost another year too,
So I tell people I own a 1977 house in Kempsville. It's a beautiful house. But I can imagine owning a house that was built in 1719. If you can imagine, like my house that's, almost 50 years old. These old houses just are a love affair for us, but we have to fix some of the things that are happening to them.
Okay, Jess and then Barbara.
I had a question about the Lynn Haven House.
Sure.
Years ago, when I was getting married, I had inquired about using that location for my wedding. Once it's reopened, are we going to start more aggressively trying to do that?
Absolutely. That's the perfect house because the parking, and Vice Mayor Wood's son was actually married there.
in the education center.
People do use it, but they put up tents all the time.
I mean,
It's perfect because of the parking. We're able to borrow the church lot that's right next to it for parking, so it's a perfect event rental place.
Okay. Are we going to be more aggressive about using I think about how much those houses need in revenue. It feels like if we could kind of get our hands around being a little more
the
aggressive.
education center has a large kitchen.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I've been in
And
it.
modern bathrooms.
Yeah.
And it's also got the nice big other room with the fireplace. And there's no reason that the
So
grounds
we're
and that.
still using
So
it
the
now?
education center is actually open and available. Right now, it's just the house that's closed.
You can have a retreat there. It's a beautiful facility.
It's a very beautiful facility.
I raised the money for it.
Okay, Barbara?
Well, in thinking about, these 3 houses are very fortunate to have the deep pockets of the city to restore them, because all the rest of the old houses in the city are left up to individuals to do. And it's pretty tough. We really need to appreciate all of our historic properties. It seems like we usually have a little more meat in the budget document about the programming and so forth. And it doesn't really tell us much in here about what you all are doing. Where do we find that?
So our annual report that we presented back in January goes through the aquarium's annual programming. So I'd be happy to get you another copy of that, or I can provide an update for you through the city manager's office.
Well, also the historic properties, because we usually don't,
Absolutely. We did an
what's going
annual
on.
report for the historic houses as well, which I believe went through the council package, but I'll be happy to get you another copy, and we can provide additional information as well.
John?
I want to come back to pricing strategy for your tickets.
Sure, I love pricing strategy.
Well, because I think that's important to your future. And I
Absolutely.
don't know if your timing, and usually if you look at the private sector, when they have theme parks, or if you look at the aquarium that's in Atlanta, or you go out to Monterey, I'm sure many people have been to those places, you know, they usually have some kind of thing where they opening some big new thing, like maybe this conservation center. They got a pricing strategy so as they're not underpricing their product, but they're not overpricing the
Sure.
market. So
Sure.
and I would be interested at a later date. This isn't the place, doesn't affect your budget, but I do think that's fundamental to the future you talked about. Is
Sure.
what is your pricing strategy going forward across the thing?
And can I just tell you a little tidbit, because you'll be very
Like to
proud.
share, I'm not just
So
demanding an
we work with Impacts, which is an international firm. They're surveying the market and our visitors on a regular basis. So those surveys can tell us the sweet spot on that price, whether we're overpriced in customer satisfaction or whether we're underpriced. A few years back, when we set our new prices, we realized that people felt like they were getting more value for their buck. So we were actually able to increase our prices without those guest experience scores going down. But there's definitely a sweet spot there, and it's definitely scientific. It's not a throw a dart on the board. So we actually, every 3 months, are surveying, we're in market surveying the visitors as well as the market to adjust that pricing schedule. So, but I'd love to sit down and share that with you, because it's very data-driven and and it's not just a dart on the board either.
That's why I know, because I read a lot of how Disney went about pricing, different market, but how they go about raising their prices.
Absolutely.
without
And our
losing
membership
customers.
structure as well, they help with that, so that's very important.
Forward to having that meeting. Cynthia,
Good,
very
I
much.
do.
Thank you.
Barbara?
I had some more questions.
Sure.
Looking at the metrics, the performance metrics of the department, I can expect the visitors to the aquarium to be down with the Marsh Museum closed, but it went down from 690,000 visitation to the aquarium in 17 to 640,000 in 18. So what did we attribute that to?
So, two things. One, the 690 was the highest attendance that we've ever had in the history of the aquarium. And then that was also the year that we adjusted our prices. So while our attendance went down, our revenues did not. You might say, well, that's not necessarily a good thing, but from a guest experience, it's a great thing. Because if you've ever visited us on a summer day, when there are 6,000 people in the aquarium, no one is having a good time. And so that I would attribute to that price adjustment.
And the theater patrons number?
Well, the theater is a great study, and in fact, we're very grateful because the city manager gave us $250,000 in his budget, in the CIP budget, to study our theater as part of our front entrance study. We know that theaters, when Lynn Haven, you can go see an IMAX movie at Lynn Haven. When we first opened in '96, there were no IMAX theaters anywhere in Virginia. We were the only one. We know that people, our biggest competition is the couch. You can stream, you can get Netflix, you can get our Redbox at the grocery store. So we know the future of the theater is probably going to change from being a theater. And I'm glad that you saw that, because I like it when people read stuff.
Okay, anyone else?
Right.
Okay,
Thank
you
you.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Good stuff.
Okay, council, you're hanging in there well. Last briefing for the operating budget, day one, is Parks and Recreation, and Michael Kirschman, the director, and his staff are coming through the door right now. Michael, it's all yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Michael Kirschman, Parks and Recreation Director, Mayor Dyer, council members, Manager Hanson, here to present next year's operating budget. Before we get started, just a couple quick things. I want to thank all the staff that are here for helping me out. We got a great team behind this, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at what we have in store for you today. The first thing I'll mention is you'll see in the middle of the title screen there the word CAPRA. That stands for the Commission for Accreditation of Park and Recreation Agencies. We are a CAPRA accredited department. We're very proud of that. In fact, we were the very first department in the state of Virginia to become accredited back in 1999. We're currently going through our 5th reaccreditation process right now. It's an arduous process, and we should be reaccredited this fall at the national conference. So moving right ahead, Mr. Hansen is very fond of saying we are a city government that does everything for everybody, all the time, everywhere. And that is certainly true with the Parks and Recreation Department. Most residents, I don't think, even realize the scope of our services that we provide to the city. We're not just recreation centers, amazing recreation centers. We're not just athletic fields. We're not just over 290 parks. We're also the maintenance for all the city roads, the medians, and the curbs and the gutters. We're also the largest child care provider in the city, serving thousands of children per day in all the elementary schools. We're also free swim lessons for second graders throughout the city. We do a lot. We're also tourism. When you look at the Princess Anne Athletic Complex, hosting over 25 major events last year, bringing in $50 million economic impact. We're a marina. We're golf courses. We're bikeways and trails. And when the weather is nice, we're very busy. When the weather is rainy, we're very busy. When the weather is stormy and snowy and a hurricane, guess what? We're busy because our staff are out there clearing the roads and responding. So we are truly a department that operates 7 days a week, year-round, everything for everybody, all the time, everywhere. And we're very proud of that. And the services we provide are really second to none in comparison to other park and recreation departments throughout the region and country. So again, just a little bit about what we do. A little overview of how we're structured. I believe most of you know this, but just in case. We're divided into 4 divisions. One of them is over business systems. Miley's here. That's accounting, budget, marketing, internal services. Planning, design, development, Chad Morris. All of our landscape architects, designers, planners for parks and renovations. Program and operations is Shirley. That's over all the rec centers, aquatics, therapeutic and inclusion services, fitness and wellness. Did I leave out, Shirley, anything? Youth Opportunities Office, you just had a presentation from Tiffany earlier today. All underneath program and operations. And finally, Park and Landscape Services with Frank's team, again, maintaining all those assets throughout the city. You'll see that compared to the current year budget, the request for next year is about a 1.5% increase. Of that, 85% we can completely cover. Really, the new funding is about 15% of that 1.5%, and we'll go over that in just a second. That's our total budget, how it all divides out. And I'm going to fly through these unless you have any questions, and we can always come back to them as well. This is broken down by budget unit within the department. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on these, just showing where the money's changing. The vast majority of these changes are internal changes, moving staff from one section to another, moving funds around. So I'm going to go right to the final slide, which will summarize it, which says at the end of the day, again, we're looking at a little less than 1.5% budget increase for next year. But that doesn't tell the whole story, because of that $980,000 in additional funding, the vast majority of that we can cover with our own revenues, our own budget. It's not new funding being requested. So let's dive into the request for funding. The first one is that we are looking at salary increases for some of our part-time staff. As you can imagine, we're pretty much at full employment in this country. A lot of these positions are very tough to fill, even harder to retain. And so we'll get people coming to the door. They're leaving 6 months later. We've trained them how to operate the front desk of a rec center. They've learned our computer system. They know our policies, and they walk out the door. That's very true as well in the out-of-school time program that we're operating in all the schools for childcare. So we're really looking at some changes to our part-time positions to really make them more competitive in today's market. You'll notice anywhere it says Park and Recreation Special Revenue Fund, all that means is we're funding that through our own revenues and our own resources. That's not new money being requested from the city. It's not coming from the general fund. It's Park and Recreation Fund. We're also looking for a new full-time position in Shirley's department. The scope of services she has is quite large. She has one manager. We'd like to add another one next year. Again, going to out of school time, we're looking to convert, take a part-time position with some additional funding, make it full-time. This is a position that oversees all the registrations for thousands and thousands of kids per year. We're having a really hard time managing that service. We're using a lot of abacus employees and seasonal employees with that. We really need some additional full-timers in that section. And then we're also looking for to add a 4-year-old pre-K program, 27 new spots. To do that, we need $10,000 and more operating dollars, but it will bring in $60,000 in revenue. So we're just adding that in there so that you can see it can pay for itself, but it does require $10,000 in supplies. We actually already have the staff for that. It's just opening up new positions in the schools. Finally, we have 2 new facilities coming online in the fiscal year. As you're familiar with the Lesnar Bridge, we'll also have Marshview Park coming online. That's around $72,000 for all the maintenance throughout the year at those 2 sites. And we're also looking for roughly $81,000 from the schools to cover the pay increases for staff that maintain the school grounds. So that's where you really see those 2 items right there are the sum of the new funding being requested. We are proposing some fee adjustments for next year, slight fee adjustments to the OST program, slight adjustments to rentals and program fees throughout the department. We can go through all those if you'd like to. We're also bringing in $61,000 on the pre-K program. So we should bring in, we anticipate bringing in $370,000 more next year. We have, as you know, effective yesterday, eliminated the dog park and the skate park fees. Those are now free. So that has a negative impact of $67,000, although you should know we've been spending $150,000 to implement those fees. So that's actually an efficiency and a cost savings behind the scenes, but on the budget books, it looks like a $67,000 loss. So we've had lots of positive comments on that. That's already in effect right now. It was going to be very difficult to implement that in the middle of the summertime. So that's why we went live with those fee reductions on April 1st, prior to people paying for year-long passes and having to get refunds. Other than that, moving forward, as you know, we're looking at really addressing a lot of our deferred maintenance and aging infrastructure. We just implemented a new strategic plan that is in full force right now. We're looking to expand program offerings to high demand areas. We're looking at increased IT technology, mainly Wi-Fi in some of our facilities. If you go to the PAC right now and you're a tournament director, you're bringing in 30 teams, you want Wi-Fi for everybody there to run your tournament. We're looking at Wi-Fi for Mount Trashmore. We are just now starting the Recreation Center modernization study for the big 3 centers, as well as SeaTac, as well as looking at a potential site in Centerville. We're trying to get some money and funds and ways to develop our undeveloped and underdeveloped sites, and we're continuing to make internal service improvements throughout the department, as well as looking for partners. So that was a lot said in a short time. I'll end with this Saturday is the Cherry Blossom Festival. Please come out and join us, and I'll take any questions.
Rosemary, wait, Jim, and then Rosemary.
Hey, just looking at your budget, pages 242 and 243 in the city budget. You touched on this about the additional funding for landscape maintenance, increased in contractual landscape maintenance costs for 2 capital projects, Lesnar Bridge and Marshview. So how much is Parks and Rec and Landscape Service and that sort of thing using inmate workforce now?
That's a good question. Frank?
I'm sorry.
What percentage of the work is being done by the inmates with the Sheriff's Office?
We are using the Sheriff's Office for about $500,000, $600,000 worth of contractual maintenance. We pay them like we pay a contract.
So there's no cost savings?
We're paying them the same hourly rate that we pay contractors?
No, they're saving us a significant amount of money, but we are paying them like a contractor, and they maintain probably 30% of our roadways.
Okay.
Of our divided roadways.
All right, then going to your reduction in the 2 FTE reductions for skate parks and dog parks. And it indicates in here, it says elimination of dog and skate park fees reduces the need for these parks to be staffed. Now, I don't know if it's the need for the parks to be staffed, but it reduces the ability to staff them. But I guess my question is, when we first implemented the dog parks and the skate parks, it was a big deal that they had to be staffed for liability reasons. We had to have somebody there to to make sure that the big dog's not eating the little dog and that the kids know to wear the helmets and
Yep.
things like that? How are we fixing that?
So you're correct. When a lot of these types of amenities were new to Parks and Recreation when they first came out, most park systems around this country said, "Ooh, this is new for us. We're not sure about this." And they got with their risk folks, and their risk said, "Oh, maybe we should man these things." And that's how they started out. And then over time, the vast majority of park systems across this country have gone to free, at your own risk, open access, because they've realized that there is no increased liability. So prior to doing this, of course, we met with legal, we met with risk management. So no issues there whatsoever in terms of a risk or liability standpoint. Now, the folks that come to those need to realize that we used to have the skate parks were staffed. I mean, we had somebody sitting at a skate park when it was raining outside and the skate park was empty. Or we had somebody sitting there all day when it was open, we had somebody sitting there looking at it. And if somebody's injured there, our staff would call 911. Everybody has cell phones. Everybody can call. Usually we're not even the first person to call 911. Somebody else is already calling it. The dog parks have never been staffed, somebody standing at a dog park all the time. Our staff would swing through and check, and we will still have staff maintaining these sites, swinging through these sites, but we won't be checking for passes or making you run to the rec center to pay $10 for your yearly pass to come back and running through those hoops. So really what we're doing is we're just opening it up to everybody. Everybody can use them free of charge. And then we're taking the positions that manned the skate parks, and as I said earlier, we're kind of realigning them within the department to help us improve services elsewhere.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Jess? Wait a minute, I'm sorry, Rosemary, then Jess, and then Barb.
So we're looking for opening up some other dog parks.
We are.
And I wanted the council to know that I have been bugging Michael to find a dog park with a lake or something for the dogs to have a water feature. I'm sure we've been getting all the leash or not, to leash or not leash. Because the dogs really like the water.
Yep.
You know, I know in Seattle, when I was out there with my daughter, there was a water feature and the dogs, they throw the bone into the water or whatever it was and the stick and the dogs are going to water and they were so happy, everybody had a good time and I think that that would be really helpful to have.
I agree.
And we have a lot of places that it's bound to be, we've got to be able to find.
Regardless of what happens with the leash laws, it would still be a good idea to have a dog park or two with water features in them, where dogs can cool down, swim, older dogs can get a workout, it's good for the joints, just like humans. It's very beneficial.
Yeah, so anyway, I wanted the council to know that you're on the hunt.
We're on the hunt.
We're on the hunt.
We've been talking about it quite a bit the last couple of weeks.
So please find us a park, a dog park with a water area.
Jess?
I think
Barbara,
ahead of me.
okay.
Well, I want to talk about open space. I went to both retreat opportunities prepared and didn't get a chance for either one of them, so I guess this is the only place to get to talk about open space. It's related to Parks and Rec because, of course, the open space program was, and the committee, which we have still, is a subcommittee of the open space program. And we did that program targeted with a $50 million amount of money, and it's been out of money for a couple of years now, so there are no more open space purchases. But any of the money that's coming in that I guess is different, excess from what it's taken to pay the debt, is going for maintenance of parks. And I think that's very important. And I think it's very important and good that you're looking at making some of the parks also be a part of the stormwater system. But I think we need to do both. And I think that if we look at the Dewberry Policy Report, there's strong recommendation throughout, particularly in Goal 8, for more open space as a part of the infrastructure for the stormwater system. We heard today that our open space purchases gave us a lot of points in our CRS system. But I really think we need to get back to being able to purchase more open space as a part of our stormwater system. I think as we look at the need to avoid development in places that are flood prone, we're going to need the ability to purchase some of that property. And I know that when we funded it with the 0.44% of 1 cent of a penny on the meal tax, the restaurants were very supportive and still are, and are disappointed that they're not collecting money that's actually going to fund purchasing of open space anymore. I would like to see us revisit that funding source. I would like to see it go back to being able to acquire more open space. And I would like to, perhaps if we're going to be using some of our parks as a part of the stormwater system, which I think is a great idea, but couldn't that be funded with some of the stormwater fee as a part of the stormwater system? So if we could look at our funding as we go into this budget, because I think we need to address it in this budget, because during this year, there are going to be opportunities that we're going to miss for open space purchases if we don't have funding available. So I would really like to have us revisit the way we're funding these things, and see if we can get back to some funding source for purchases of open space. If you look at all of the properties that were purchased with the open space program, a very large percentage of them, thankfully, were purchased, because otherwise we would be having houses that were flooding in some of those places like Stumpy Lake or Pleasure House Point, or some of these properties, other properties that we purchased as a part of the open space program that are really a great part of our stormwater infrastructure system now. So I hope we can revisit this, and we can come up with a way to continue the open space program, because right now we don't have one.
Okay, Jim?
I just wanted to piggyback on what Barbara said. I think that's an exceptionally good idea to leverage a program that's been very successful. And frankly, I was very impressed to see the CRS rating, because I thought we'd be a point less than where we are on that. And when we looked at it, I went online and scrolled down and realized that you know, we're tied with the lowest in the region.
Really?
Other regional cities have you know, have a higher number, I guess, or a higher number and a lower discount. But when you read the Dewberry study and you take a look at this stuff, and you know, during the campaign, I got yelled at by a couple of people because I said this, but at some point, you have to take a look at where you can build and where you should not rebuild and things like that. You can adapt or retreat to stormwater, and with the open space program, it gives us an ability to adapt and to utilize otherwise developable property for stormwater treatment and to help with that. So I think it's a great idea, and it's extremely popular with the public, and I just think it's a good idea.
Well, I think it's very popular with the public. I know that it was really a success, and even at the point where and still, the committee gets requests from neighborhoods asking that the city consider purchasing property for open space, and there has to be the answer, well, there's no more money.
Yeah.
So it's very popular with the public, and I think it's something that the public can appreciate as a part of our stormwater infrastructure, because they know how it works. We don't have to explain a levee or a weir. They know how it works to not have houses built there. So I think it's thank you very much for those comments, and I hope we've convinced a couple of other people we ought to look at it too.
Jess?
I have a question about the preschool program. We fund the preschool program 100%.
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. How quickly are those positions filling?
The part-time or the full-time?
Both.
If you want exact numbers, I can get back to you on that.
An exact number, but I mean, the reason I bring it up is I've heard in the community that there is a concern with how people can't get into the program.
It is, I will tell you, it's tight, and it's tight in certain locations. So our out-of-school time program is roughly 35 full-time staff, 350 part-time. A lot of those are teachers that get extra money, so some are not. So we're always looking for part-time. And in fact, part of our increase in pay was for our out-of-school time part-time folks, because we need to keep them in. And we
The pre-K is what
Oh, the pre-K?
It's pretty competitive in terms of getting in. enrolled.
Unless I'm mistaken, our pre-K is typically determined by space size, not so much staff. We can expand spots at schools. We have the space, we have the room, but in terms of our pre-K, we're limited on our facilities.
But the spots themselves, those are
They're
very competitive,
Yeah.
is what I understand.
Yep.
So, do you know how many we have every year for the pre-K?
In terms of the pre-K at each site, I can get that for you. I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm just interested in one of the groups that I am a part of on Facebook is Hampton Roads Moms, and there was a big thread about the cost of childcare
Mhm.
has gone up pretty significantly, and I was talking with some of them, and I had mentioned to somebody, oh, well, there's a program at Kempsville, you should look into it, and
It's a popular site.
I have heard that if you're not there at midnight when enrollment opens, you're not gonna get in. And so I'm just curious as to how true that is.
You're likely hearing correct.
Wow.
John?
I'd like to turn,
The school year participants.
Okay.
early childhood.
179 school year
And 18 in the summer.
and 18 in the summer.
I'd like to turn to slide 5 if I could, please.
Mhm.
Generally, pretty much the industry experiences to try to drive down and not see growth in business systems. They look for annual productivity and certainly the drop in technology and storage. So I'd like to better understand what's driving that and what initiatives we have to be driving down business system costs, because this is an area across all sectors of the economy where people are pushing down and expect to see cost shifts to the left, especially since you're not carrying the cost of security that's being carried at another level.
Mhm.
So this is just direct services. It seems like cost growth runs against the industry experience. I'd like to know more about that
I
if
can get you
could.
detailed information.
Thank you. And if we could turn to slide 8. I don't know, I know we went through a whole discussion. Are we, for these positions, are they enough hours that they're securing health benefits from the city?
For the part-time, no.
Yeah, so I know some of the hours, there's that threshold that we meet that. I'm just
Yep.
curious if that's the case. I would suggest to you that these are still too low. If you go and look at the average weekly wage in the private sector in Virginia Beach, 70%, which is of that 151,000, you can get off the unemployment statistics, is $714 a week. That's the average salary across that group. And that's about $18 an hour. Costco's paying 15 now. I think Walmart's up to 12. So I suspect that probably, and I don't know what your sensitivity analysis tells you, and I don't know what the money is, but if you're trying to get sustainment, and I'm not telling you how to do your market analysis, but I'm just looking at what I see, that probably those are off by about, that's the activity center leader. If Costco's paying 15, I suspect if you want to compete with Costco, you might want to, that might be off. I would look at those maybe being off about $1 each across there just to see, but your analysis tells you best. I don't look at your data, but if you look at the employment statistics and what turnover you're having, I'd be interested to know, what is the goal you hope to achieve? You know what turnover you have now, right?
Yep.
And you can share that. You obviously think at this price point, you're going to get something else, a different turnover rate, I assume.
That's correct.
And that'd be good to know, and maybe the best way, Mr. Manager, is to watch and see if that occurs, and if it doesn't, then come back and make an adjustment. But I'd be interested in understanding the business case analysis in light of, the biggest change in pay is not at the high end of the labor market. It's really at the entry-level labor of the market. That's where the greater competition, it's like houses.
Yep.
You know, they sell faster because people can afford them. So I'd just be interested in understanding that and where that, what would lead you to say that, oh, we're not achieving the goal we thought with the price point? I'm not asking for an adjustment, I'm just trying to understand.
Yep. I'll get you all that.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, is there anybody else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And Mike, can you stay for council comments? There's going to be a mention.
Sure.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, at this point, council liaison reports, anyone? Jess?
I met with the Historic Kempsville CAC on Monday, and they're working very hard on the micro park that we're working on that was one of the reasons why we had asked for the 50,000 last year. That's going to be funded this year. And they're working on getting a lot of the historical markers in the area so that you can walk around that area. And I also met with the developer on the other side, and I'm hopeful there'll be a updated site plan here for us to see soon. But I just wanted to let you know that the CAC is working diligently and advocating for that area to be something really special for the community.
Thank you, Jess. And, Sabrina?
I attended
And then Barbara.
the Vision 2040 meeting, and they just really, they're really passionate about what they're doing, and they asked me to make sure I communicate, that passion. When they're out there, they're communicating the vision for the city. They do want to, at some point, come in and give a presentation for everyone. I know that we're working through some changes with that committee, but they did, express that, we're using some of those elements of that whole 2040 vision. And so they just want to make sure that, when they come and present, that we have open minds and see the real need and essence of what they're doing. So I wanted to communicate that. The other meeting I attended was open space. And really, just the consensus there was from the committee chair and the committee members. They're excited about the Dewberry study and that the opportunity is there that Councilmember Henley offered to help implement some of those implications from the study. But they're just asking that the people from the Dewberry study come in and kind of educate them a little bit more, but they're excited about what they're doing. So.
Oh, that's great. That is great. Barbara?
I mentioned last week that Melanie Coffey was going to be making a presentation about the water quality aspects of the stormwater at the Green Ribbon Committee, and she did, and it was an absolutely great presentation for an hour and a half. And she probably could have talked much longer than that because there's so much involved with what's going on. I think we overlook the fact that water quality is very much a part of all of our stormwater issues, as well as the quantity, and very important, and the requirements. But I learned a lot from what she said, but 2 or 3 things I just wanted to share with you. There are really differences in requirements depending on the watersheds. So much is geared toward the Chesapeake, and very little, I think, toward the southern watersheds. But even in the requirements that, the regulations and so forth, they're regulated different. And then there are regulated parts of each watershed and unregulated parts. So this whole thing of water quality is very involved. And I think we might do well to have some more understanding of just where that all goes. I had asked last week, I think, about TMDLs and how many TMDLs we have now. I know we get, we got very excited a few years ago about the TMDLs for the Chesapeake Bay, and that's kind of worked itself out a lot. But we also have those with a lot of the creeks and so forth in both the Chesapeake and in the southern watersheds, and having a handle on just what we're looking at now. But one of the things that she said is that we get credits for, like, removing phosphorus and so forth on property that's city-owned. And I think the fact that's a fact, and I would like to double-check that and make sure I heard that right. This, I think, would also give us a lot more leverage with open space and purchasing property if it also gives us credits in TMDLs. That's pretty big. So looking at that aspect as well. But in thinking about the southern watershed, and I'm hearing an awful lot of concern about water quality and what's going into the bays, and particularly North Bay. And so I would like, it seems to me that I remember, I know it was 10 years ago, that we got the first TMDLs for the southern watersheds, and that was Nanny's Creek and Upper West Neck Creek, and then a creek over in Blackwater, Mill Dam Creek. But I think there's also one for Asheville Creek, but I'm not sure if we have gotten, how far we are in any of those implementations. And since there's a lot of concern about that creek, I would like to have some kind of overview of just what's going on with Asheville Creek. And I know that the watershed for Asheville Creek is very large. I think it comes down from Dam Neck all the way down to just below Asheville Park. But we hear so much about the Asheville Park project. I think it's overlooked that the Asheville Creek actually drains much more area than just Asheville Park, and they're very much confused. So I would really like to have an overview of the Asheville Creek watershed and just what does go in there and so forth. And that makes me think of Ocean Lakes. I don't think Ocean Lakes goes into Asheville Creek. I think Asheville Creek is Lagomar and Heritage Park and all of those areas. But I'm thinking Ocean Lakes might go to Hells Point Creek. So I see Tom shaking his head. We really need to have some kind of explanation of what is draining from all of this area and how it's draining, because I think there's a lot of confusion. And I seem to remember that the refuge put a weir in at one of the lakes that is now on refuge property. I'm not sure if it's the old salt pond or the old fresh pond. I know they have different names now. But I think that weir has been in for probably 3 or 4 years and should have some good experience. We have a lot of concern about the weir that's been put in at the Asheville Park project. But if we've got this other one that's very close by that has got an experience data, I think it would be awfully good to get that data and to understand just how that is working. And then one other aspect of what Melanie was talking about that particularly I think was it was discussion that I appreciate. She was talking about the ability of commercial properties particularly to get some relief from their stormwater fee if they do certain things, a sort of an incentive program. And I think as the stormwater fee goes up, because I've been really concerned, I know that that commercial fee is pretty high now, and we're going to keep raising it, not only just with the residential, but that triggers raising in commercial. If we could look at this program and see how many people really take advantage of it. And I'm particularly concerned because that also applies to nonprofits, particularly churches. And I know it's a great burden on the religious facilities, paying those fees. But if we can entice people to incentivize more with what they're doing, I know we really haven't gotten it down to the residential level yet. Maybe as it goes up, we would be able to. But it's a program that is in place for commercial, and we really need to encourage people to take more advantage of it and let these places that are eligible for it know so they can do those things. It'll be a win-win for them in being able to reduce their fee, but also in our stormwater system to help those things too. So it was a very good discussion at Green Ribbon. I learned a lot, and sometime when we have time, it would be good to hear from Melanie just all that we're doing with the water quality issues.
Thank you. Okay, John, then Rosemary.
You forgot me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I haven't left yet.
Okay.
I defer.
I'm sorry, Shannon, go right ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say the Minority Business Council is having their contractors roundtable tomorrow at the Advanced Technology Center from 1 to 4. There's going to be a panel discussion on, I think the theme is forging sustainable diversity in the marketplace. So there's going to be contractors there and businesses hiring subs, et cetera. So come on out if you want to do business with the city. 1 to 4.
Thank you, and appreciate you working with those folks.
You're welcome.
John?
The Deferred Compensation Committee meets tomorrow. I'll be calling in, so I'll need a number. But they'll be coming back with a report to the council at the end of that meeting. We got to package something up, but give you a current status of where we're at and the direction we're going to take. But I want to get out ahead of the committee.
Okay, thank you, John. Rosemary?
Last week, the mayor and I were at an event with economic development where 19 grants were given out for the bio incentive program. You remember we doing the bio park, and these were 19 grants that were awarded. There were over 400 applications given for bright new ideas of new businesses that want to startups. And we saw applicants from Mexico to the West Coast, but a lot right here in Virginia Beach. And some really exciting new ideas, from a knee brace that will help you with pain to a small CT scan that you can bring up to the side of a bed to helping detect cancer. And Bobby, what are some of the other ideas?
I'll tell you what, there was just a plethora of them, and a lot of young people, innovative, and
A lot of
you know, just
minorities.
out of, yes,
A lot of minorities.
out of the box thinking, and I'll tell you what, I was really impressed by
It was amazing, and they're going to be setting up these little almost gardening, I guess, right here in Virginia Beach, and getting these businesses started. And I don't know if Taylor's here, if you wanted to add to that.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I will tell you that
It was a very exciting thing.
it was a great day for us. At a minimum, you're right. There were 19 businesses that will open and operate here in Virginia Beach and are required to stay here for 7 years. That's the piece for the city. For participating in this challenge, you agreed that you would open and operate or have a presence in our city for 7 years. So a great day for us. And you're right. We saw it truly was a global challenge. In addition to Mexico, Silicon Valley, the D.C. area, Maryland, but yes, 7 firms from here in Hampton Roads, 4 from Virginia Beach. So a great day for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, council comments? John?
I have one. I just want to let you know that Jessica and I, just like last year, we're going to be developing and presenting an alternative budget. I realize there's no one speaks at the podium for the 70% of American families who live paycheck to paycheck and can't come up with $400 in a month for an emergency. No one speaks for them at that podium, and someone has to show that there is a way. We might hard choices, but the path of least resistance can't be to put additional financial burden on very stressing families in today's economy. The stock market does not reflect the financial health of our residents, and we have got to have a better way than the way that's been recommended.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Barbara?
Well, really neat, just to pass on to you that the students at the AP Environmental class at Kellum have been doing projects on how to deal with stormwater in the southern watershed. And their teacher, Chris Freeman, asked me to look at some of the projects and see what the students were doing. And so I had that opportunity over the weekend. He sent them to me. And I think, number one, it's really exciting to know that our students are understanding what we're faced with. And I hope that as we reach out to the rest of the community, we can sort of achieve this same kind of level of understanding with our older folks. What their projects show, I think they had 3 or 4 different particular areas, but number one, they were looking at the New Kellum and all of the stormwater initiatives that are a part of it. And I think they came to the conclusion that it's worth the money to do these lead schools, because particularly as Kellum is designed, and some of those features over there, if you've seen the cisterns and the ponds and so forth, you know that it was really developed with stormwater in mind. And but then they also looked at what happens to that water after it leaves Kellum. And this is something that I think we should have as a goal with all of our properties in the city as we reach out now to talk about the policy documents and the stormwater, that we could hope that we could have every neighborhood in the city, every commercial property, every school, every residential property, not only understand what's happening on their property, but what does that water do when it leaves their property? Where does it go? not just to the BMP, but where does that BMP drain to? And I think the Chesapeake Bay folks did a good job with this, but we need to have this, I think, continued everywhere, that people know where that receiving water is. And if they haven't picked up their pet waste, and if they are using chemicals on their lawn, and if they're not careful with their car, where does all that stuff go? And I think that's very important for everybody to know about your property. And they did this with Kellam. And they also took it another step further and said, what are some things that we could do better? What are some more things that we could do here with Kellam? But then I think as we are going out to our folks, we need to have everybody say, what can I do better on my property? If it's a house, can I have a rain garden? Can I have a barrel, rain barrel? What are the things that I can do? Can I make sure I pick up all the pet waste and all this other stuff? So I think we can take what the students at Kellam have been doing, and I hope we can adapt it as we go into the outreach with our neighbors. And they did a great job. And I hope that we can have it as our goal, that we're going to have everybody in the city understand stormwater as well as those students do now. But they did a wonderful job. And I thank Mr. Freeman for letting me participate.
Okay, thank you.
John
John?
Nickelback, I just want to remind people I'll be having a town hall at Bow Creek tomorrow night at 6:30. Doors open at 6. I will not need staff for that presentation of the budget. I can talk about that myself. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, if you don't mind, I would like to, just take a minute, of your time. One of the great things about living in Virginia Beach are the heroes that live among us. And I've had an awareness of a couple that I'd like to just bring forward real quick. Last Saturday, I was asked to do a proclamation for a group called Good Deed Day. And I'd never heard about it before, and I'm sure a lot of folks didn't. And it was to honor a young woman who was a student at Virginia Tech who tragically passed away in a motor vehicle accident 2 years ago. Her name was Paige Neubauer. And her legacy was that from the time she was a young child, she always tried to help people. That was her mission in life. And since her passing, her parents, Lynn and Brett, organized Good Deed Day to honor her. And when I showed up there were 200 people waiting in, proper T-shirts to go out to help elderly people and all different kinds of people. And I'll tell you, it was one of the most humbling experiences I ever faced as I read the proclamation about this young woman's accomplishments in life and the legacy that is being carried on by her parents. So I thought I would pass that on. And then when I came here today, I was made aware of another hero, an 85-year-old former Marine by the name of Howard Lee. And he lived among us. He worked with us. And if you don't mind, I'd like to, in 1966, he fought in a battle that he won an award for. But if I could just read one paragraph from his obituary, and I appreciate your indulgence. Captain Lee continued fighting despite being wounded by a grenade that left 15 pieces of shrapnel in his body and partly blinded him in one eye. He was later awarded the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration. And after retiring from the Marine Corps with the rank of lieutenant colonel, he traded swords for plowshares, embarking on a horticultural career in which he rose to oversee landscaping in the city of Virginia Beach. A true hero among us that maybe a lot of folks weren't aware of. The obituary cited that he never really talked about it or mentioned it, but, I think we just, take great pleasure in a city that has our military with us to realize that we have these heroes living among us. And, thank you for letting me state that.
May I comment on that?
Oh, yes.
Yes. We had the funeral for the colonel. And for the first time that I can remember, in all the years I've been in funeral work, we had a full contingent, 2 full platoons of Marines who came down from Washington, D.C. and we had a full Marine Corps band that came down from Washington DC, and numerous Marine Corps officers, but a 3-star general that showed up for the funeral. And if you had stood out there and watched the performance that those Marines put on for the colonel, it would have made you cry, really. It was so fantastic. And we really should send a letter, Mayor, to the people at Arlington, because that's where they came from. They sent their people from Arlington National Cemetery.
We'll be glad to do that.
And thank them for recognizing one of our people.
Now, I tell you what, we are surrounded by heroes. Thank you.
That's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Bobby.
Thank you. Okay, let's do the agenda review, then we'll read the, close, and then we'll, prior to going into close, we'll take a break, okay?
Okay, under ordinances and resolutions, I believe item 9, we're gonna have a presentation on that out there on the school buses.
I can address it here. I'm not giving a presentation. I'll give you some comments.
All right, do we don't have time, do we, now?
Okay, I can
We'll do it
address
out
it
there.
out there. That's fine.
Yeah, so that one we'll hear, because I think there were some
we can have a
questions.
little more than just the buses, because I was astounded at, reading the newspaper this morning. I'm not so sure this event has gotten a little bigger than we had intended, and I'm really concerned that, we are encouraging people to begin their properties as Airbnb to help provide housing. This is kind of spreading citywide into all of our neighborhoods, and I'm not sure we're going to be, I want to make sure we're able to handle all this, and this hasn't gotten bigger than we are going to be able to handle. So please be
If you can address
prepared to
that too.
present some other things.
For that as well. Other than
So I
that,
guess we're pulling that.
yeah. So items J1 through 10, with the exception of 9, any other issues? Jessica,
I have just a question.
which one?
Number 1, I know that was
Yeah.
David's initiative, and
Yeah.
he's obviously not here anymore. I'm still not really clear on what this is doing.
Do you want consent for denial?
I don't necessarily want to deny it. I just don't really understand what we're doing.
I don't either, to
I
be
think it's
honest.
What about
overtaken by
consent for deferral, so we can get a...
Overtaken by events, we have the recommended budget, it's before us. I mean, I don't know, we can work, each of us could propose amendments, I just think it's
Why
no
don't we
longer
just
valid.
Definitely defer.
Yeah, let's definitely
I can
defer.
go with that.
Good point, Jess.
Okay.
Any others?
I do. 5, we're adopting a budget on May 14th. We're less than 90 days from a new budget, and we're amending and adding full-time positions to the current year budget. I don't understand the emergency that has to take place, that couldn't happen on 1 July. It has to happen now. I mean, I just don't understand it. And I read through the stuff, and to me, it's like, these are the things I always talk about, these last-minute adjustments, and we're only, 1 July is less than 90 days away.
I can tell you that we perform over 2,000 operations in our care center. We have been out twice during the year to recruit this technician. You can't get a part-time technician. There's so many vets out here, there's so many surgeries. We need this individual.
So both positions are now vacant? Both part-time positions are now vacant?
To my knowledge, no. One of the positions is filled. To my knowledge, the second, that's a permanent technician. The part-time technician is not filled, and we can't get anybody to fill that. It's impacting our surgeries, it's impacting service to our citizens.
Here's what I'm just reading, it says convert 2 part-time, not 1, says 2.
There's an administrative person that's getting thrown into that to help offset the cash
I'm
associated
gonna
with
still
it.
vote no, I think it's bad budgetary practice.
I think I would just tell you, it's part of business in a major operation like we run
Anybody
here.
else?
in
Not any
PNC.
bigger than the Congress, I don't think. I got another one. Well, I guess we're gonna hear it outside, but I have, and why is the extension on 8 for 2 years? Is it 2 years? Why wasn't it 1 year? Why isn't it 5 years? Why was it 2 years? This is the one, number 8, where we're still marketing the property, can't meet market conditions. I'm just trying to understand, the thing didn't provide the rationale for 2 years, it just said 2 years. Well, how is that better than 1 year? How is it better than 5?
I would tell you that we don't have any current prospects. It's not moving in the intersection that the old Rite Aid was going to go into. If the council wants to only extend it 1 year, then I
My
wouldn't
question, not
object to that.
reducing it, my question is, at the end of 2 years, if that's the time we went and still nothing had happened, would we then say it's time just to void the agreement? Or we just want to say, no, we want to keep those conditions whenever market conditions prevail, and therefore there's no time limit? I'm not trying to shorten or lengthen it, I'm just trying to understand the thought process that got us to the answer you gave us.
Jess?
I met with the developer across the street, and they're looking at trying to be in construction within the next 2 years, so, I mean, I
All right,
don't think that justify, I don't know if that justifies.
Right, so John, do you
moving
I'll
vote?
support that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to
That is, there
understand.
is something going on
Anybody else
across
under
the
ordinances and
road.
resolutions? Okay, under planning, we have Clear Creek Holdings LLC, which has been deferred a couple of times. That's the conversion of R10 residential and I-1 light industrial to conditional I-1 light industrial over off South Bird Neck Road in the Beach District.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you, I met,
I've talked to them and to this members from the CTEC Civic League, and their majority of them do not want this in their community. They say for lack of the traffic, it will increase traffic, will cause, along with the proposed other major development, I believe the chip plant, or battery plant, whatever is going over there on Owls Creek, as well as all the other associated storage units, the other business centers that's not even a mile down the street, and they said it's changing the characteristic of their neighborhood, as well as their kids walk constantly up and down Bird Neck, and the increased foot traffic will make.
Okay, so you want to hear it then? Okay, so we'll hear it. Okay.
That's it? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to recess into a closed session pursuant to the exemptions from open meetings allowed by section 2.2-3711A Code of Virginia as amended for the following purposes. Publicly held property, discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for real public purpose, or the disposition of publicly held property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining positions or negotiation strategy of the public body pursuant to section 2.237A3. Princess Anne District, Lynn Haven District. Legal matters, consultation with legal counseling and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meetings would adversely affect the negotiation or litigating posture of the public body, and consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by the public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to section 2.2-337A7, Argos Properties LLC versus City of Virginia Beach, Mid-Atlantic Arena LLC versus City of Virginia Beach, and council residency districts. Personnel matters, discussions, considerations, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1, council appointees, council boards, commissions, authorities, agencies, and appointees. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Mr.
Okay,
Mayor,
call the roll.
Mr.
Yes.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we add a discussion of Clear Creek Holdings.
Under
LLC.
legal matters, as
Under legal matters.
I know why.
as-
Okay. Okay, okay, that is also included. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll, please.
Mr. Jones? Ms.
Finley. Aye. Mr. Moss.
Aye.
Ms. Abbott.
Aye.
Mr. Rouse.
Aye.
Ms. Wooten.
Aye.
Ms. Kane.
Aye.
Ms. Wilson. Aye. Vice Mayor Wood.
Aye.
Mayor Dyer.
Aye.
Cindy Lee.
Okay.